Your eyes open before the sun rises, not because someone wakes you, but because the cold does. The kind of cold that settles into your bones and reminds you that today is not a day like any other. Today you leave Iceland. Today you sail into the unknown, into open ocean that has swallowed men stronger than you without hesitation, without memory, without a trace. Today you will learn what it means to be a Viking at sea. You lie in the longhouse for a moment longer, feeling the chill in the air, listening to the sounds of movement outside. Men's voices, low and serious, the scrape of wooden crates being pulled across packed earth, the bleating of sheep being loaded, the impatient whinny of a horse tied near the shore, the gulls overhead, already awake before most humans, crying out in sharp voices that always make the north feel more lonely, more real. The smell reaches you next, fires newly lit pine wood and tar heating in clay pots, tar for the ship, always tar for the ship, the lifeblood of Norse vessels. Without it, water finds a way inside. And the sea is not forgiving. You sit up, breath turning white in the dim air. The longhouse is lit only by a small fire at the center, embers still glowing red. Most others are already awake. Your father is tightening the straps on his tunic while speaking quietly with the captain, Ketil Raffinson, a man whose face looks carved from old driftwood and whose eyes speak of too many voyages and too many storms survived. If the sea has ever taken something from him, it never gave it back. Your father notices you and nods once. Approval, acknowledgement, and command all at once. Time to move. You rise and begin dressing. Wool trousers, linen undershirt, wool tunic, cloak, then leather boots well-oiled and caulked against seawater. The garments are heavy, not elegant like kings might wear, but functional, designed to trap heat and block wind. At sea, warmth equals life. As you adjust your belt, you notice your mother silently watching from the far end of the hall, arms folded, trying to look composed. She has lived through departures before, hunting trips, short voyages, but this one is different. This is not a journey with a known destination. This is not a path handed down from fathers and grandfathers. This is a journey into the blank spaces on the world's map. Except there are no maps, not for what lies ahead. You walk outside and the cold immediately slaps your face. The wind is awake, racing in from the north. It tastes like sea salt and distant glaciers. You taste it through your teeth. Down the slope you see the harbor, if a rocky inlet with a single wooden pier can be called that, and the ship waiting in shallow water. Your ship. A knarr broader and deeper than a longship made for cargo and surviving the fury of open water. Oak planks overlap in the clinker style, wool sail dyed deep red hanging limp, waiting for wind. A black raven flag whips at the bow, snapping in the wind. Odin's symbol, reminder of the All-Father's ravens who see further than any man. The crew is already working. Some carry barrels of dried fish. Others roll water casks toward the pier. A few younger men lead sheep up the gangplank, living food sources for a journey too long to rely only on dried rations. You join them, grabbing a heavy barrel of barley meal, lifting with your knees the way your father taught you and carrying it toward the ship. Hard work warms you fast and your muscles wake up. Ketil, the captain, stands aboard the knarr shouting instructions. Load the meal forward, balance the weight. Do not make the bow heavy or the waves will punish us. He has a voice like a crashing breaker, loud, relentless, impossible to ignore. You respect him. Everyone does. A ship is only as strong as its helmsman. Your father joins you on deck, handing you a coil of rope to stow. Remember, he says, the sea kills the unprepared first. Strong men mean nothing to waves. Smart men survive. You nod. Vikings do not conquer the sea. They negotiate with it, daily, hourly, every minute of every voyage. He gives nothing freely. As the last supplies load, a small procession approaches the shore. The families of the crew not coming to help, but to say goodbye. Goodbyes in the north are quiet, not a lot of tears, not a lot of words, just steady eyes and tight jaws. Everyone knows how many men return from voyages like this. Not enough. Your mother reaches your side. Her hand rests briefly at the back of your neck, thumb brushing your hair the way she did when you were small. She says nothing. She doesn't need to. Then she whispers, "Trust the sea, but trust your hands more." A lesson all Vikings learn. The captain calls out, "Cast off!" The gangplank is pulled in. Men take their places at oars. The tide is turning. Your window is now. Iceland's shore recedes behind you as the knarr glides away from land. No maps, just memory, wind, stars, instinct, and the hope that the sea will let you pass. The deck of the knarr smells of tar, sea salt, wool, and freshly scraped wood. You move carefully between crates, barrels, sacks, and bundles as the last of the cargo is tied down and secured. Every object has a place, and every placement affects the fate of the voyage. On land, disorder is inconvenience. At sea, disorder is death. The captain moves down the center of the deck, checking each knot, each lashing, each angle of balance. He does not trust eyes alone. He pulls, tugs, shakes, testing strength instead of assuming it. That is the Viking way. A thing is only true if it can withstand pressure. You are assigned to help secure the food supplies: dried fish, smoked lamb, barley meal, butter, oat flour, and kegs of ale. Vikings do not carry much fresh water. Water spoils quickly in barrels, but ale remains safe to drink no matter how long the voyage. It is thick, crude, sometimes sour, but on a journey like this, it is life. You reach for a thick hemp rope, rough against your palms, and begin tying a sailor's hitch around a barrel. Your father watches you, eyes sharp. You tighten the knot, then test it with your weight. Only after it holds do you step back. "Good," he says. "At sea, check everything twice, then check again." The shipwright who built this knarr walks slowly along the hull, fingers pressed against the overlapping oak planks. The clinker built ribs that allow the ship to flex with the sea. You watch him as he crouches near the waterline, running pitch along a seam where oak meets oak. He smiles, satisfied. "There," he mutters, "tighter than a miser's fist." Your father laughs. The shipwright narrows his eyes. "When she starts groaning mid-ocean, you'll remember this moment and praise me." A Viking ship is not only wood, rope, and wool. It is a living creature. It expands, creaks, contracts, sings. If it stops making noise altogether, something is very wrong. A silent ship is a drowning ship. Down near the bow, two men are loading livestock, sheep and goats mostly, living provisions to ensure fresh meat for a voyage too long to gamble on salted stores alone. You watch as one sheep stubbornly refuses the ramp, digging its hooves into the planks. A sailor swears in Old Norse, grabs the animal by the horns, and tries again. The sheep finally lurches onto the deck, bleating its opinion about Viking exploration. Farther aft, others are stacking wooden chests against the mast, each containing tools, weapons, and spare rigging. Iron nails, carving knives, bows and arrows, spare oars, coil after coil of line, repair hammers, bronze rivets. Viking voyages assume damage. A man who goes to sea expecting calm water is a fool. A real sailor expects something to break and prepares the tools to fix it before the problem happens. You look up at the sail, wool dyed deep red with madder root. Wool is heavy when wet, hard to control in wind, and requires constant maintenance, but it is also resilient. A well-made sail can last years. This one is new. The captain insisted no one crosses the North Atlantic with old cloth. The rigging is a spider's web of tarred rope, shrouds, stays, halyards, pulleys, and knots. The oldest sailor aboard, Hoskuld, runs a hand down the mast and speaks in a gravel voice. "The mast is your backbone. If it breaks, so do you." He says it casually, but the meaning is as serious as any prayer. Nearby, the navigator, the helmsman everyone simply calls Old Arnvid, sits cross-legged, carving new marks into a wooden memory board. No Viking navigator of this era carries a map. Instead, he carries stories, spoken roots, poetry, star paths, directions encoded in verse and memory. The board is only reminder, not instructions. You watch him work. He notices your attention and motions you closer. "You think we navigate by strength of arms and speed of sail?" he asks. You shake your head. "Good," he says. "The ocean is too large for muscle alone. You need eyes, memory, and humility. The sea is not impressed by warriors." You sit beside him as he points to the edges of the carved board. "These lines represent swell direction. A good navigator can read waves like fields of grass. Their height, rhythm, and timing tell you where land lies, even if you can't see it." He taps another set of carved marks. "These little cuts mark the stars that guide us in winter. Polaris, Aldebaran, Alker, each a trusted teacher. Men lie, clouds lie, the ocean lies, but the stars, they are loyal." You nod, understanding beginning to form, but only in the way that a child understands the weight of a sword. You know what it is, but not yet what it truly means. Men begin raising the sail. The crew grips the halyard lines and leans backward, muscles straining, boots scraping the deck. Slowly, the red wool rectangle climbs the mast. Wind catches it, first gently, then with a full push, snapping it taut. The ship moves. The tarred hull slides against the dock, then glides into open water. You feel the deck beneath you shift, come alive, steadying itself against the swell. A knarr is not shaped for speed like a warship. It is shaped for endurance, for survival, for the long, punishing push of deep water voyaging. Your stomach tightens, not with fear, not exactly, but with the awe of what you are stepping into. Iceland already looks smaller. The land seems fragile compared to the endless steel-gray horizon ahead. The captain's voice calls out, "Secure oars, hold to course, sea trails will guide us." You grip a rope, feeling the ship's pulse beneath your boots. Somewhere deep inside, a realization settles. The next time you touch land, it may not be land anyone you know has ever seen. The last glimpse of Iceland disappears behind you as the knarr angles into deeper water. At first, you can still see the dark volcanic ridges and white dusted hills fading into mist, but soon they become nothing more than a gray shadow between waves. Then even that is gone. There is no turning back now. The world from this moment forward is ocean. Mood aboard the ship shifts. While in harbor there had been noise, direction, shouted orders, loading, movement. Now everything has narrowed to one reality. The sea decides what happens next. The sail is full wind driving you forward across a heaving swell. The knarr rises and falls, the sea lifting and dropping the hull in an endless rhythm. You grip the gunwale and watch the water slant upward and fall again, spray cold on your face. This is no longship built for shallow coasts and rivers. The knarr is deeper, broader, bellied like a seal, so it can ride towering ocean waves instead of spearing through them. Still, each wave that lifts you feels like a giant rolling beneath the keel, testing whether it will allow you to rest harmlessly on its back, or swallow you whole. A gull lands on the yardarm above you, eyeing your crew with unconcerned intelligence. Arnvid, the navigator, taps your shoulder. "You see that bird? While they follow us, it means land is somewhere within a day's flight. When they leave us behind," he shrugs, "then we are truly alone. Before the voyage is done, you will come to respect the gull no less than the stars. Your shift begins soon. Men are divided into watches, 4 hours of duty, 4 hours of rest, rotating around the clock. Discipline is not written on parchment, it is etched into daily necessity. Someone must always hold the tiller, someone must always trim the sail. Someone must always watch for signs, currents, seabirds, weather, the behaviors of the waves. You spend your first watch amidships, helping to coil extra line and secure loose gear. Nothing must be allowed to roll, swing, or shift. A barrel come loose in a storm is not an inconvenience, it is a weapon. Your father works beside you, apparently calm, yet you know him well enough to see the tension in his shoulders. A voyage like this can humble anyone, even him. He gestures toward the waves. See how they are moving from the northwest? That tells us something. We are leaving Iceland, but the sea is not done with Iceland yet. You watch the waves, trying to see what he sees. To you, they look like endless walls of shifting glass, but after a few minutes you realize their crests are angled slightly, moving with a directional intelligence. Your father continues, lowered voice so only you hear. "A man can lie, a memory can fade, but the sea always says what is true." These are not academic lessons. These are survival rules carved from centuries of tragedy and triumph on the North Atlantic. At the stern, the captain stands beside Arnvid, who grips the steering oar. The giant tiller swings like a heavy lever protruding from the side of the ship. There is no wheel. Steering a knarr requires strength, judgment, and the ability to absorb the sea's violence without flinching. Arnvid's gaze is on the horizon, squinting into the spray. His words carry across the deck. "We hold for west by south. The winds favor us." The captain nods. "All men eat before nightfall. The first trial of a voyage is not the weather, it is the stomach." He is right. Many young sailors are not defeated by storms, hunger, or fighting. They are defeated by the relentless motion of the sea. You feel it already. The deck moves beneath your feet as if alive. Not an enemy exactly, but certainly not a friend yet. You grip a rope until your body adjusts. A large barrel of ale is opened, and men take turns drinking from carved wooden cups. You sip the thick, bitter brew coating your tongue. It warms your chest but sits uneasily in your stomach. You force it down anyway. Empty stomachs are worse. Dinner is passed around on wooden boards, salted trout, hard bread, goat cheese. Nothing fancy, nothing warm, but full of the calories needed to work in cold wind. You eat while sitting on a crossbeam, watching the sea turn silver in fading light. Night approaches. The sun dips low, its orange bleeding into dark storm-colored clouds. The temperature drops sharply. Your breath steams again. Voices soften, colors fade. What had been world now becomes void, nothing but the narrow circle of what the men can see and hear. Torches cannot be carried on the open deck except near the sheltered fire bowl, and even that must be tended carefully. Smoke is coaxed upward, not allowed to spread. Fire is a danger as real as the sea. A Viking ship cannot tolerate a spark out of place. As night settles, Arnvid demonstrates his real work. He lays a circular wooden sun shadow board across his knees. Carved marks hint at seasonal angles of the sun. He holds it against a rope and adjusts the position by the ship's sway. The younger sailors study his hands. He looks at you directly. "There may come a night," he says, "when storms tear the sail, the compass stone shatters, and you cannot see the stars. On that night, your memory will be your only map. Ask yourself, what have you seen? Which way were the waves moving? What birds did you see fly at dawn? What currents touched the keel?" He taps the wood once hard. "Navigation is not numbers, it is testimony." When your watch ends, you lie down beneath a tarp, cloak wrapped around your body. The boards beneath you are cold, hard, and always in motion. The sea's breathing rocks the ship without mercy. Sleep does not come gently. It comes only when exhaustion finally defeats discomfort. And while your eyes close, a thought presses through. This is only the beginning. By morning, the ocean will show you more. The sea has changed by morning. Yesterday's long, rolling swells have transformed into a choppier surface, shorter, more impatient waves tapping at the hull as though testing the ship's resolve. The chill is sharper, the wind louder, and the world feels both larger and more remote. Land is already a fading dream. You wake to the shout of the watch leader and the smell of fish broth steaming in a small iron pot near the sheltered fire bowl. Sleep was small and light, but it is enough. On a voyage like this, comfort is not something given. You must steal it where you can. Arnvid, the navigator, is already awake, kneeling near the stern with his carved memory board and a small pouch of worn stones. His back is bowed by age, but his movements have the precision of a hunter cleaning a blade. He motions you over with 2 fingers. "You're young," he says without preamble, which means you still believe a journey is about distance. You frown, unsure what answer he expects. He taps the planks beside him. "A true journey is not about how far you go, it's about how much you see." He places the first stone in your hand. It is pale yellow, nearly translucent, flecked with tiny fractures within. "Sunstones," he says. "Iceland's spar, you've seen it before, but today you will learn it." He holds his own stone toward the sky. The horizon is cloaked in thin cloud, the sun only a bright smear behind mist, impossible to locate with bare eyes, yet Arnvid's voice remains confident. "The sea hides things, the sky lies, but light has rules." He rotates the stone, watching how the beams pass through. Then he nods to you. "You try." You lift the stone, feeling foolish at first. It is just a rock, or so you thought. But as you angle it, something changes. Light inside the crystal splits. 2 soft glows appear, not where the sun should be, but where the polarized refraction lands. You move the stone again. The twin glows merge, then become one. Arnvid smiles. "There, now you know where the sun is even when the sky denies it." He gestures toward the helmsman. "Imagine a storm comes tonight, no horizon, no stars, sail torn. With no memory, we drift like fish bones in the tide, but with knowledge, we hold course." Knowledge aboard a Viking ship is value greater than gold. Wood can break, can snap, wind can betray, but knowledge remains. Arnvid leads you to the railing, pointing at the water. "What direction do the waves travel?" You stare. The sea seems chaotic, waves lifting and falling without pattern, but Arnvid is patient. "Don't look at the tops, look at the rhythm below." You focus. After several moments, you notice something. Beneath the messy peaks is a deeper pulse, a larger, slower swell pushing from one direction. The smaller waves ride atop it like children on a mother's lap. "From the northwest," you say. Arnvid nods once. "Good, now combine it. The wind is from the southeast, the swells from the northwest. If we drift, the waves will decide our fate, not the wind. So," he taps the railing gently. "A good navigator thinks not only where the ship is, but where the sea wants to carry it." He squats, collecting pebbles, black basalt, and speckled granite. Then he scatters them at your feet. "This is how you remember landfalls. Each stone is a landmark, but the map exists here." He taps his skull. "No parchment can hold all the seas, but a mind can." You feel something stir inside you, not fear, not pride, but the realization that Viking navigation is not about instruments. It is about attention, constant attention. As the morning wears on, men adjust the sail to squeeze more speed out of the wind. The ropes creak, timbers flex, and the ship groans like an old bull shifting its weight. You work beside your father, tightening knots, hauling lines, feeling the strain in your forearms. "You think this is hard work?" he asks with a grin. "Wait until the sea gets angry." You smile but do not answer. The truth is, the sea already feels alive, like a sleeping predator shifting in its dreams. By midday, Arnvid instructs you to mark your observations in the only way Vikings did, through spoken memory. He teaches you a verse: "North wind biting, west swell riding, sunstone hidden, true light guiding. If sky is blind and stars concealed, waves reveal what land has sealed." You repeat the lines until they settle in your bones. This is how Norse knowledge survives, not written, not drawn, but sung, recited, spoken until it becomes indistinguishable from instinct. Clouds thicken overhead. The sunlight fades. The sea darkens. Arnvid inhales slowly. "Tonight," he mutters, "you may see why Vikings learn before they travel." Your backbone chills, not from the wind, but from the sense that the ocean is about to test your new knowledge, and it will not be gentle. Night falls like a curtain dropped without warning. One moment the sky is only dim and heavy with cloud. The next, the sun vanishes completely, leaving the ship in a world without horizon, without boundary, without dimension. The sea and the sky become the same color, black, with no line between them. The ship sails inside a void. Your breath fogs in front of you as the wind sharpens further, biting at fingertips and ears. The cold is no longer a sensation, it is a presence. It presses against your skin, creeps through your clothes, settles in your chest. Every Viking learns it eventually. The North Atlantic does not merely exist, it hunts. Men move slower now, not from fatigue, but from instinct. Darkness at sea is not a place for quick movements. The deck is slick, ropes wet, planks cold as iron. A single misstep means a foot between the strakes, or worse, over the side. Arnvid once told you, "A man who falls overboard at night becomes one with the sea before anyone even notices he is gone." There are no rescue boats, no warm lit cabins, no nets, no second chances. The fire bowl glows weakly within its metal shield, embers flickering low. Someone adds a sliver of dry wood to coax more heat, but flame is dangerous here. Fire is a luxury that must be balanced against survival. At the stern, the helmsman grips the great steering oar, shoulders squared against the force of the waves. The ship rocks and moans, the swell now heavier than during the day. Water slaps the hull with cold hands. Each strike echoes like a drumbeat, a reminder of the sea's patience and its appetite. Your shift begins again. You join the men tightening sail ties and aiding Hoskuld, the salt gray veteran who seems older than the mast itself. He moves with deliberate control, never hurried, never careless. Age has not slowed him, it has sharpened him. "Wrap your cloak tighter," he mutters. Cold in the joints becomes pain in the hands becomes knots tied poorly, and poor knots, he gives a humorless smirk. "Well, the sea thanks you for the gift." You obey, pulling your wool cloak close, fingers already stiffening despite the effort. A cup of warm broth is passed around, ladled from a small pot over the protected coals. It's thin, flavored mostly with seawater and fish bones, but the heat is blessed relief. You drink your portion, steam warming your nose, and hand the cup forward. As you work, you feel the ship's motion begin to settle into your muscles. The constant roll and sway that made your head spin earlier now begins to make a kind of sense. Viking sailors never fight the sea, they learn to move with it. Arnvid emerges from the stern shadows, a small wooden board in his hands. He kneels on the deck, holding the carved tool against the rope tied at the ship's center. A coal oil lamp flickers beside him, just bright enough to illuminate the instrument. It is the sun shadow board, the primitive navigation device that Vikings used when stars were hidden. By aligning the board with the ship's center line and adjusting the angle to the known time of year, Arnvid can judge the latitude by the height of the sun's path, even when the sun cannot be seen directly. You watch as he monitors how faint refracted light touches etched marks on the board. It looks simple, but the calculations exist entirely inside his head. No scrolls, no compass. The captain stands beside him, arms folded, respecting the ritual. A Viking voyage is part skill, part trust, and part surrender to forces older than mankind. A shout breaks through the ship's quiet. "Wave on the starboard side, hold fast." You grab the nearest rope and brace. A swell taller than the others slams into the hull, washing over the gunwale. Cold water cascades across the deck, soaking boots and trousers, numbing toes instantly. Barrels rattle against their lashings. Two men scramble to recheck the knots. No one screams, no one panics. The sea is allowed its moments. Panic only wastes strength. When the wave passes, Arnvid continues his work as though nothing happened. The ship steadies under the captain's calm control. Men resume their tasks. A Viking crew expects chaos the way farmers expect rain. Hours pass. The sky remains blind. No moon, no stars, only the wind, the dark, and the slow sound of hull against tide. Finally, your watch ends and you retreat to your rest space, nothing more than a patch of deck beneath an oiled calfskin tarp. You coil your cloak under your head, cross your arms for warmth, and lie down. Sleep comes slowly. The boards are hard, the wind relentless, and the constant motion keeps your body alert even when exhausted. But fatigue eventually overpowers discomfort. Your eyelids droop. Somewhere between waking and dreaming, you hear Arnvid's voice in your head. When the sky disappears, you must remember what you saw when it was visible. Memory is the only map the storm cannot wash away. You drift half asleep, the ship rocking with the ocean's pulse, and think, this is only night one. There will be many more. And not all of them will be kind. You wake before dawn, not to call, but because the ship itself shakes you awake. The knarr seems to tremble from the inside, its hull vibrating as if something ancient beneath the water line is speaking through the planks. You sit up, cloak wrapped tight, body stiff from the cold and the hard boards. The sky is still black, the wind louder than before. Someone mutters nearby. "She's getting restless." She, always she. A Viking ship is never in it. A knarr is alive, wood taken from trees that grew under the same sky, shaped with hands that bled to shape it. She carries the lives of everyone aboard. She deserves respect. A shout from the stern, "Wave coming!" You don't have time to process before the deck tilts sharply. You brace yourself, boots skidding slightly as a larger wave slams the hull. The ship groans and lifts, then drops with a hollow thump that rattles your teeth. Cold spray hits your neck and trickles under your tunic. Hoskuld, already awake, claps your shoulder. "Welcome to the real sea. Yesterday was a child's lesson." He walks across the shifting deck without wavering, knees bending with practiced instinct. You follow, less graceful, gripping the safety ropes. The darkness makes everything feel closer, more threatening, especially the waves you can't see until they're already on you. By the time you reach midships, you notice men at the bailers, simple wooden buckets tied to lines, passing water over the side. The sea has begun helping itself aboard, and the ship will only stay afloat if the crew puts the water back where it belongs. You grab a bucket and join them. Scoop, heave, repeat, muscles burn, breath fogs. After only minutes, your arms ache and saltwater stings cuts you didn't know you had. Nobody complains. Complaint has no value here. Efficiency has value. Focus has value. Your father works 2 positions down, sweat and salt glistening in his beard. Even he looks strained, and that is more frightening than the sea itself. Your father rarely shows weakness. When he does, you learn to pay attention. Arnvid stands near the stern, watching the horizon or the darkness where the horizon ought to be. He leans on the railing, feeling the way the ship moves through the water, not looking, sensing. Hoskold sees your eyes drift toward him and grins. The sea is speaking. Arnvid is listening. You frown. What is it saying? That the waves are changing, he answers, voice flat. The pattern was simple yesterday. Now she's adding a second rhythm underneath. You shake your head. I can't see that. He pats your shoulder with a heavy hand. You will. If you don't, the sea will teach you overnight. A message with no ambiguity. As gray morning slowly begins to bleed into the sky, Arnvid calls for everyone not on bail duty to gather near the stern. You join the circle of tired, damp sailors as he crouches and draws with a piece of charcoal on a plank. Drawing is simple, lines crossing lines, the shape of waves. You've been watching only the tops, he says. His voice is low but not harsh. The sea has more than one message. The large swell, she comes from the storm 3 days ago. But now look, he draws a second, smaller wave pattern crossing the first at an angle. That's new, wind from another storm farther out. Someone swears softly. Arnvid nods. Meaning what? Another sailor asks. Arnvid's eyes fix on the horizon. Meaning something is coming. Silence, not fear, just understanding. Norse sailors do not fear storms. They fear being caught unprepared. He stands, joints cracking softly. Eat while you can, work while the sea allows it, rest while you're able. Storms teach on their own schedule. The ship keeps rolling. Some men return to bailing, others check their gear. You help tighten the lashing on a large supply crate that has worked itself loose. Your fingers are stiff, rope burning your skin, but you keep going. Your father comes up behind you. Good, you straighten. What is the lesson today? You ask, breath fogging. He answers simply, that the sea has no loyalty. He ties off the final knot, hands steady despite the motion of the ship. She does not care how long you've trained, what you hope for, who you love on shore. If you want to live, you must listen. He points to Arnvid, still at the stern, eyes narrowed into the wind. Look at him. He listens with everything. Eyes, skin, balance, memory. That is how our people crossed the ocean without parchment. You follow his gaze. Arnvid does nothing dramatic. He simply stands there, fingers brushing the rail lightly, reading the world through sensation. Your father continues. Strong arms pull an oar, strong minds steer the ship. A short while later, your shift ends and you drop onto a coil of spare rope to catch your breath. Your arms feel like lead and every muscle in your back throbs. A young sailor near you is quietly retching over the side, sees sickness winning its battle. Hoskold hands him a piece of dried bread. Chew, stomach likes something to fight. The boy tries. It helps only a little. You close your eyes and focus on the motion of the hull. Up, down, tilt, shift. Slowly, your body begins to anticipate each rhythm before it happens. Your balance adapts without thinking. This is what Arnvid meant. Navigation begins with attention, not to tools, but to reality. As the day deepens and clouds gather, you sense the lesson settling in your bones. The sea does not try to kill men. She simply does not care if they live. The wind changes before the clouds do. It always does. Veterans feel it in their bones, in the way the ship leans a little harder and how the ropes begin to hum instead of merely groan. The sky still holds that dull, iron-gray light, but there is weight behind it now, like a giant pulling breath before speaking. You are mending a frayed length of stay cord under Hoskold's supervision when Arnvid's voice cuts through the cold air. Reef the sail? The command is sharp, immediate. There is no hesitation, no debate. Every sailor reacts at once, dropping whatever they were doing to take stations. Your stomach tightens. Reefing the sail means the wind is too strong for a full cloth. A ship that refuses to shorten sail in time will not see the next sunrise. The red wool sail begins to descend as men haul the halyards. The canvas wrinkles, bellying sideways in the rising gusts. You run to the port side, gripping the reefing lines with numb fingers, tying them through reinforced loops along the sail. Your hands shake, not from fear, but because the cold now slices like iron. Hoskold grunts near your ear. Faster, boy, the wind doesn't wait. You yank the rope harder, cinching the heavy wool tight and knotting it off. Others do the same across the spar. The sail shrinks by a third, safer surface area for the ship to manage. A moment later, the first drops hit. Not gentle rain. Cold, sideways needles driven by the wind so fiercely that they sting your cheeks and ears. The sky darkens suddenly, clouds tightening overhead like fists. The temperature drops faster than seems natural. Arnvid's voice rises again. Storm in the southwest. Helmsman, hold her 10 degrees to port. The steering oar shifts, and the knarr groans as the hull realigns with the swell. The waves change rhythm, growing steeper, heavier. One slams against the bow, sending spray over the deck. Two men slip, catching themselves on the rails. You wipe your eyes and look back. The horizon disappears completely, swallowed by a wall of approaching gray. The storm isn't just coming, it is arriving. Your father strides across the deck, hair whipping in the wind. He hands you a short piece of tar cloth. Wrap your wrists. Rope burns in a storm are as dangerous as any blade. You do as instructed, winding the cloth around each wrist and securing it. The ship lurches again, another wave striking the hull, pitching you forward. Your father catches your arm. Stay low, always. Lightning flashes in the far distance, silent at first. A moment later, thunder rolls across the sea like a collapsing mountain. Someone mutters a quick prayer to Thor, god of thunder and storm. Hoskuld spits into the water. Thor hears us. I only hope he's in a good mood. You can't tell if he's joking. Wind screams in the rigging, ropes vibrating like bowstrings. You can see your breath as you move, the air freezing faster than seems reasonable. The sea begins to heave in heavy rolls now, not short waves, but deep, massive swells that lift the ship like a child's toy. Arnvid braces himself near the stern, gripping the rail with one hand, steering oar with the other. He does not shout, does not panic. He simply reads the sea. Your father leans toward you, voice close to your ear so the wind doesn't swallow it. The trick is not to fight the storm. You guide the ship so she bends and flows. If you try to stand against the sea, he taps the railing once, a sound lost in the wind. She breaks you. You swallow and nod. There is nothing more to say. Men on bail duty begin working harder now. Water splashes over the deck with every rising swell. The scuppers drain, but not fast enough. You join them again, bucket, scoop, throw, rhythm only interrupted when the ship pitches so hard that the bucket tries to escape your grip. Your arms burn. Your back aches, your eyes sting with salt, but you keep going because everyone does. Nobody gives orders to bail, nobody asks. The work is just done. Over the roar of the storm, Arnvid calls something forward. Cloud base too low, we lose the stars tonight. Kettle, the captain, answers with equal force. Then memory holds the course. Lightning flashes again, closer this time, bright enough to illuminate the deck as though dawn returned. In that frozen second, you see. Water cascading off the sail, Hoskuld lashing down a loose coil, your father hauling a rope hand over hand, the knarr tilted at a steep angle, cutting into a massive swell, then darkness again. Rain thickens into a slashing torrent. Your tunic clings to your skin. The cold is now total, fingers numb, ears burning, jaw tight. You grit your teeth and keep bailing. Minutes or hours pass, you lose sense of which. Finally, Arnvid signals a temporary easing of tasks. The ship has settled into a stable angle. The worst of the first blast seems to have passed. Men drop onto crates or coils of rope, shoulders heaving, lungs burning. Hoskuld wipes his face with a rough wool sleeve. That, he says, was the storm asking how serious we are. You lean against the gunwale, chest rising and falling, and whisper silently to yourself, if that was only the beginning, what comes next? The storm does not arrive like a single crashing blow. It arrives like a relentless series of assaults, each larger than the last, like the ocean is testing how many strikes your ship and crew can endure before something gives way. By the time full daylight should have come, the sky remains black as an iron cauldron, rain and spray turning the world into a shifting blur of gray shapes and roaring sound. You are already soaked through. Nobody aboard is dry. Cloaks cling to bodies, wool tunics heavy with seawater. The deck is a slick battlefield of ropes, barrels, livestock pens, and shifting shadows of men fighting against the ship's new enemy, the sheer force of the sea. A voice bellows from near the bow. Wave front! You look up in time to see a swelling mountain of ocean rising ahead, taller than the mast, foaming white at its crest. The helmsman yanks the steering oar, muscles straining as he angles the knarr to meet the wave head-on. You grip the nearest line and brace. The knarr climbs the wave like a beast clawing up a hillside. For a moment, gravity seems to fall sideways. Your stomach shifts, legs burning with the strain of holding balance. Then the prow crests the summit and the ship slams downward with a bone-rattling crash. Every man grunts at the impact. Somewhere, a sheep bleats in panic. A barrel bangs against its lashing. Arnvid shouts orders that vanish into the wind, yet somehow everyone follows them. Sail angle is adjusted again, just enough to keep the ship driving into the waves instead of being battered sideways. The knarr was built for this. Deep-bodied, flexible, able to flex its ribs like a living creature rather than snap like a rigid keel ship. Still, even the best ship has limits. You make your way toward the stern, boots slipping on wet boards. At one point, a wave floods ankle-deep across the deck, ice-cold and carrying loose debris. You nearly lose footing, but a hand shoots out your father's and yanks you back upright. Keep 3 points of contact, he says through clenched teeth. 2 feet, 1 hand, or 2 hands and 1 foot, never less. You nod. The sea does not give time for discussion. The hail begins next, sharp little stones of ice hammering the deck, bouncing off the sail and rattling against helmets and skull caps. Some men drop to one knee, shielding their faces. You pull your hood low and continue holding the rope you were tying. Fingers numb, knuckles scraped raw, but the knot secures. An older sailor, Thorleif, slips while crossing the deck. His legs shoot sideways, his body sliding toward the rail. You see it in a blink, the wet boards, the slant of the deck, the sea waiting just beyond. If he goes over, the ocean will claim him. Without thinking, you leap, grabbing the back of his tunic. The extra weight drags you down too, but your other hand snags a line. Together, straining, you pull him back from the edge. He gasps, eyes wide with shock, then nods once. "Good hands," he manages. "Your father taught you well." You nod back, but there is no time for pride. The ship is already pitching again. Men return to bailing water, buckets scooping, arms burning. It is endless, like throwing back the tide itself. But if they stop, even for a little while, the ship will begin to sink. Viking storms do not kill quickly. They drown slowly, inch by inch, through neglect. Arnvid appears beside you, face soaked, white beard plastered to his chest. He braces a hand on the rail and leans close, raising his voice. "Remember this, the sea speaks, not to the eyes, but to the body." You blink against the rain, barely understanding. He stamps his foot on the deck. If the deck lurches differently, it means the wave angle changed. If the ropes hum sharply, the wind has shifted direction. You must feel it before you see it. You understand now, not perfectly, but enough. Navigation isn't only reading stars or waves. It is reading yourself, reading how the ship translates the ocean's message into motion. Lightning strikes the clouds to the southwest, illuminating the sea in terrifying clarity. For a single second, the world becomes bright as daylight, and what you see takes the breath from your lungs, a wall of water, even larger, rushing toward the ship. "Brace!" someone screams. The knarr climbs the swell, but this one is too steep, too fast. The prow punches through the foam, but the next drop is brutal. The whole ship slams down so hard the timbers shriek, and every man grabs whatever is closest. Your cloak tears at the shoulder. Someone nearby curses violently. Thorleif spits a tooth into the sea, but the ship survives, because Vikings survived by building ships that bend before they break. The captain calls, "Adjust sail again, keep her pointed into the teeth of the waves." Hoskold roars back, "Work the halyards tight." You grab a line, hauling with everything you have. Shoulders burn, breath becomes steam. Rain blinds you, but the sail shifts just enough. Then, suddenly, something changes, not visibly. Not loudly, but you feel it. The waves are still enormous. The wind still savage, but the pattern stabilizes. The rhythm becomes predictable. The sea has stopped testing and begun attacking consistently. There is grim comfort in that. By the time darkness falls again, the storm has not ended, but your fear has changed. It no longer feels like panic. It feels like work, like survival, like belonging. If the sea respects anything, it is endurance. Tonight, you earned a little of that respect. The storm does not end cleanly. It fades slowly, reluctantly, like a wounded beast still snapping its jaws even as strength leaves its body. The wind settles from a scream to a howl, the waves shrink from mountains to hills, and the rain thins into a cold, steady drizzle that feels almost gentle compared to what came before. No one celebrates. A Viking crew knows the sea sometimes gives calm only to see what damage it has done, and the storm has done plenty. The deck looks like the aftermath of a battlefield. Loose ropes tangled where they shouldn't be, a barrel staved at the top from slamming against a beam's seaweed, and debris scattered near the bow, one of the sheep lying still. Neck broken from impact, sail seems stretched, and frayed, a small crack widening along the starboard gunwale. Damage control begins immediately. Kettle, the captain, moves through the ship like a stern father examining his children after a street brawl. Report. Every issue, no matter how small. The crew divides naturally, no arguments, no wasted time. Some resume bailing what water still sloshes in the bilge. Others inspect the rigging. A handful check the livestock and secured supplies. Hoskold claps you on the back hard enough to make you stagger. "You're with me, woodwork." He points to the splintering crack along the upper strake. "You see that? Ignore it and we'll be swimming by dusk." He opens a low chest and pulls out a small tool kit. Wooden wedges, resin blocks, hammer, bronze tacks. A caulking chisel. Viking ships were built not only for flexibility, but for in-field repairs. They were armored with practicality, not illusions. No matter how good your shipwrights were, the sea would always demand maintenance. Hoskold positions you to hold the plank in place while he presses in resin softened near the fire bowl. "Don't baby it," he growls. "If you don't force it into the seam, the water will." You lean in, using shoulder and weight instead of just arms. Hoskold nods once. "That's better. Use your body. Arms get tired, backs get tired, but you have more than that. Use everything." Your hands tremble from the strain, but the resin seats deep. He follows with a wedge and hammer, driving it tight. The crack closes. A few feet away, Arnvid is teaching two younger sailors how to rewrap a frayed line. He holds a length of sheep wool rope, showing how to splice ends back into themselves. Never cut away rope unless you must, he says. A ship at sea is always short on something. He guides their fingers, under, around, through, again, now once more. The motion repeats, slow, methodical, careful. Your father leans over their shoulders. A bad splice might hold in calm seas, but the ocean doesn't fight fair. She attacks when hands are cold and minds tired. Meanwhile, the torn sail receives attention. Two men unloop the reefed cloth and examine the damage. Just a few rents, 3 handspans long but big enough to become disasters if ignored. They thread thick sinew through large bone needles, stitching patches with strong cross strokes. Viking sails are not fragile. Wool soaked in lanolin becomes weather-resistant, flexible, and incredibly durable. But even they require maintenance after being chewed by a storm. On the other side of the deck, Thorleif tends to the broken top of the barrel. He seats a replacement slat and drives it down with wooden mallet blows. Not elegant, but functional. Functional is all a crew needs to stay alive. You feel the ship sway differently now, not violently, but with the heavy exhaustion of a living thing recovering from trauma. Even the knarr needs time to breathe. Hoskuld finishes the ceiling and stretches his back with a groan that could have come from the timber itself. That will hold until land. If the sea insists on taking us sooner, she'll have to work harder. You exhale, only now realizing how tense you were, but the work isn't done. The captain calls for a full systems check. Bilge level, lowering, rudder condition, good, rigging, 2 frayed lines, 1 nearly finished repairing, food stores, lost nothing except 1 sheep. Kettle nods grimly. Odin took 1, good enough. Then he turns to the crew and speaks in a tone that is calm but heavy with the weight of truth. You worked well. A weaker crew would have been feeding the crabs by now, but don't think the storm was the end. Arnvid answers for him. The sea always tests 3 times. Your father meets your eyes. He doesn't need to explain. You already understand. 1 mistake might survive a storm. 2 mistakes could be luck, but 3, the sea collects debts. The drizzle continues as the crew turns toward personal gear. Boots are scraped clean. Knives are checked. Helmets wiped dry. Men wring out sleeves and hems. Some drink a swallow of ale for warmth. Others just sit, heads bowed, glad to breathe normally again. Only then does the fatigue show, bruises, bleeding knuckles, rope burns, hands trembling from effort. But there is also pride simmering beneath every cold breath. Not boasting, just quiet acknowledgement we survived the first test. Hoskuld leans against the rail next to you. The sea taught you something today. Odd that she's strong. He chuckles without humor. She's always strong. The lesson was that you can be too. He shifts, flexing his fingers. Storms don't teach men they're weak. They teach men how strong they have to become. You look out over the gray water. The sky is still bruised with cloud, but the swells are settling. For the first time, you feel not helpless, but part of something older than fear. By the time the sky finally opens enough to show a pale strip of morning light, the crew is exhausted. Not defeated, just used. Men move with the slow heaviness of those who have worked through fear, cold, and noise without pause. The storm has eased, but the ocean still rolls beneath the knarr like the breathing of a great animal, powerful and indifferent. Now comes another lesson no Viking can ignore. Survival at sea is not just about fighting storms. It is about staying fed, hydrated, and strong enough for the next one. Your father calls you forward as Arnvid kneels beside a large barrel near the mast and pries the top off with a flat wedge tool. The smell hits immediately, sharp salt and fish. He reaches inside and pulls out a long slab of dried cod, rigid as a board. It is not appealing, but it lasts for months without spoiling, and it takes the sea's moisture willingly. He hands pieces out to the crew. Hoskuld grins as he gnaws a chunk. Nothing humbles a man like chewing fish that tastes like a boot. Your father gives you your portion. You bite into it. The texture is like chewing wood, but slowly warmth spreads through your chest as the salt and protein reach your stomach. Food isn't pleasure here, it is fuel. The first mate drags another barrel closer and uncorks it, not water. Ale. In Viking reality, fresh water spoils quickly in wooden casks. Ale, meanwhile, lasts, disinfects, and provides calories. Men fill beakers, some carved from horn, some from wood. You take your first sip of the day, and it goes straight to your stomach with a warmth sharper than any fire. Thorleif wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. People think Vikings drink because they enjoy it. That's only half true. Hoskuld raises an eyebrow. And the other half, we drink because it keeps us alive. Arnvid joins in without looking up from the rough bread he's slicing. And because sea water will kill you. He holds up a clay pitcher filled with seawater. You think you're thirsty and the sea tempts you, but if you drink this, he lets a few drops roll across his palm and rubs grains of salt between his fingers. You dehydrate faster than you can swallow. Your father nods. The sea feeds nothing easily. Some sailors take small quill-like tools and begin scoring strips of dried meat to help them soften more quickly. Others use belt knives to shave thin slices of barley bread and drizzle a little melted butter over them from a crock near the embers. A tiny flame burns in a shielded fire bowl, just big enough to warm food in dried hands. Fire aboard a ship is a blessing and a risk. Every Viking knows of at least one vessel that vanished in clear weather simply because a single spark landed where it shouldn't. "Don't get used to warm food," Hoskuld mutters. "Storms don't care about breakfast." Your father passes you a small wooden bowl with goat cheese, barley mash, and a scrap of smoked lamb. It is not elegant fare, but the combination sits well in a stomach worn thin by fear and labor. You eat while seated on a coiled rope, watching the others. There is routine in this chaos, ritual even. Food is eaten in quiet focus, not in celebration. Men lean against the mast, the rails, or simply sit cross-legged with the sea rocking beneath them. Some wipe salt from their mustaches. Some stare at the horizon. A few mutter quick prayers under their breath. Vikings don't pray for favor. They pray for strength to endure what they already know is coming. After eating, water is rationed. Arnvid opens a smaller cask, one mixed from snowmelt and stored carefully beneath salted coverings. He pours small amounts into a row of horn cups. Hoskuld hands one to you. "Take it slow. Water is precious." You sip. It tastes faintly of wood and cold earth. Better than the sea, worse than any stream on land, but enough. "How do you know how much to give each man?" You ask. Your father answers. "Capacity, effort, climate, need." Hoskuld adds. "Some men sweat more, some lose more working the sail, some were sick last night and need replenishing." He tips his chin toward a young sailor nearby, the one who had been retching during the earlier watches. Thorleif hands the boy extra water and a piece of oat bread. "It is easier to replace strength than crew," he mutters. No one laughs. Once eating finishes, routines continue. Horn cups rinsed and stacked, blades, wiped dry buckets hung to drain, hands checked for cuts, wrists flexed to restore blood flow. A Viking ship has no luxury of letting small injuries linger. A cut can fester. A nailed tear can make it impossible to grip rope. A cracked tooth can weaken a body over days. Survival is a collection of small victories. Arnvid places the last scrap of dried fish under a tarp to keep it from the birds. Then he gathers the crew midway down the deck. "Listen," he says, voice low and steady. "Food and water are as much navigation as stars and waves." Someone scoffs lightly. Arnvid ignores him. "If you lose strength today, you lose the ability to respond to the sea tomorrow. The ocean never attacks once." Your father finishes the thought. "It waits until you are weak, and then it takes everything." It isn't bravado, it isn't mythology. It is the truth anyone who sails north of known waters learns with hard experience. The first meal completed, the crew prepares again to work, checking lashings, scanning for damage, trimming the sail for efficiency. You tuck your knife through your belt wrap and pull your cloak close. Your muscles, though tired, feel more grounded now. Food turns fear into focus. Your stomach is still half empty. But that is how a Viking must live at sea, carrying not just hunger, but the acceptance that hunger will be a companion for the entire journey. The wind shifts slightly, the rigging hums, and you stand with the others. Fed, not full, but ready. The hours after the storm settle into a rhythm, not calm exactly, but a steadier survival routine. The sea is still gray and choppy, the sky cloud-heavy, but compared to the chaos of the night before, this might as well be peace. Men breathe easier, shoulders drop half an inch, and jokes begin creeping back into the cold air like shy animals returning to a field after a wolf has passed. This is when the true nature of a Viking crew begins to show. Most landsmen imagine Vikings as single-minded warriors, swinging axes, shouting, charging into glory. But at sea, the truth is different. On a knarr with nowhere to go, no privacy, and a single narrow deck for dozens of souls, a crew becomes something else, a community. And every community has roles louder than titles, quieter than rank. Hoskuld, for example, is not just a veteran. He is the unspoken backbone of the ship. When he moves, others adjust. When he speaks, others listen. Men trust him because he has survived more storms than many have winters. Thorleif, who would have drowned if not for your arm yesterday, sits sharpening his seeks, jaw set. He glances up at you. "I owe you a drink when we reach land." Hoskuld snorts nearby. "That's a small reward, considering the boy kept your skull off the bottom." Thorleif grins. "Better men have died for less." The banter is not cruelty. It is affection, the Norse version of saying, "I see you, I'm glad you're still here." Arnvid, the navigator, remains near the stern as always, but even he softens enough to trade muttered jokes with the helmsman. Kettle, the captain, moves through the men like a silent observer. He doesn't raise his voice unless needed. Leadership is not performed, it is recognized. Your father sits on a low crate oiling the edge of his axe, not because he expects combat, but because the act itself is grounding. Tools must be respected. A sharp blade means control. Control means survival. He speaks without looking at you. Remember this, on land men talk too much. At sea you learn who people really are. You glance across the deck. A burly sailor with a broken nose is trying to teach two younger men how to make a betting game with animal bones. The boys laugh, toss the knuckle bones on a plank, and groan when he wins again. See, your father murmurs. That one is loud on land, but at sea he keeps spirits warm. He gestures elsewhere. That one is a fighter in every city from here to Hedeby, but when the sea rises, watch how quiet he becomes. He waits, he listens, a different kind of bravery. You realize something. The sea is not just learning who you are, it is revealing who everyone is. One sailor, Jorund, carries a small carved figure of Thor in his belt pouch. After the storm, he takes it out, touches his forehead to it, and whispers something under his breath. Not a loud prayer, a private deal. No one mocks him. On a ship at sea, every man negotiates with the gods in his own way. Another, the youngest, barely older than a boy, sits scraping the salt from his boots. Hands shake slightly. He mutters, "My mother was right. I should have stayed and married that baker's daughter." Hoskuld passes him, slaps his shoulder, and says, "Marry the sea first. If she spits you back alive, you can marry whomever you like." Even the boy manages a smile. A short distance away, a more serious exchange unfolds. The helmsman and Arnvid stand with their heads close, speaking about the next 2 days. Arnvid runs a hand down the tiller wood. "The storm pushed us south. We must correct." The helmsman nods. "We'll need a steady wind shift." Arnvid smiles without humor. "And if we don't get it?" The helmsman shrugs. "Then we row," your father grunts. No Viking crew wants to hear that word. Rowing in open sea is punishment for the body and for morale, but no one argues. They nod because they all understand. Vows mean nothing to the ocean. Plans are luxuries. Preparation is the only truth. Break in the clouds allows pale sunlight to slip through, striking the deck like the blade of a sword. Men silently turn their faces to it. Even 5 seconds of warmth is a blessing. Somebody mutters, "Odin finally opened one eye." Thorleif leans back. "Let's hope it stays open. I'd prefer not to be tested twice without breakfast." Someone else answers, "You just had breakfast." Thorleif snorts. "That was a suggestion, not a meal." Laughter spreads, but lightly. There is no booming mirth on this ship. The sea is too close, and humor is a shield, not a celebration. Later, during a minor task break, a small story circle gathers near the mast. One sailor begins recounting a tale of his grandfather who once sailed from Norway to the Orkneys with nothing but a broken sail and 4 terrified farmhands. The story gets more outrageous with every sentence. The crew chips in, each adding detail, some believable, some not, but it works. That is how Vikings pass long hours at sea. Stories, songs, insults, boasts, quiet moments, lessons hidden in humor your father leans in. This is how we keep madness away. A ship with silent men becomes a coffin. You look around and understand. The laughter, the teasing, the banter, the insults that sound sharp but land soft, they are medicine. Men cannot fight the sea every second. Sometimes they must fight the loneliness instead. As afternoon fades, Arnvid moves among the crew once more. "Rest while you can," he says. "The ocean is never finished." No one needs convincing. Men settle into work or brief rest, gear in hand, mind half awake, half listening for the next order. The storm taught you something about the sea. Now the crew is teaching you something about people. It begins with silence, not the absence of sound. There is always sound at sea, but a change in tone. The gulls have vanished. The wind has eased into a low whisper. The waves move in slow, rolling pulses instead of sharp peaks. Men notice without saying a word. The sea is communicating again, and Vikings learn to listen even before they understand. Hoskuld stands near the port rail, head tilted slightly, eyes narrowed. Something big is down there. You follow his gaze over the side. The water is darker, almost metallic. Then the surface shifts in a long, smooth ripple that is nothing like wave or swell. One of the younger men frowns. "Shark," Thorleif scoffs. "No shark moves like that. Too calm, too large." Then the helmsman calls from the stern. "Everyone hold your footing, she's surfacing." The ship falls quiet. Even the joking men straighten. The sea is home to creatures larger than anything on land, some feared, some respected, all unpredictable. A deep, rolling shape rises beneath the surface, a shadow at first, broad, long, steady. The knarr rocks slightly as a displacement wave passes under. Then, with a sound like a huge leather bellows releasing, a column of mist erupts into the air only a ship's length away. A whale, a giant of the northern deep. You stare, mouth open. You have seen drawings carved into bone. You have heard stories told at winter hearths by traveling traders, but nothing compares to seeing the real thing. The whale's dark back glistens, scarred by time, barnacles clinging like pale runes. It glides forward, massive and slow, its presence as commanding as a king entering a hall. Arnvid murmurs, "Fin whale! See the ridge! She's older than any of us." The men stand still, every eye following the creature. No one reaches for a weapon. Vikings are not foolish. Spears mean nothing to something the size of a longhouse. The whale exhales again, another plume of breath, warm vapor hitting cold air, drifting apart like ghosts. Your father leans in. In calm seas, they surface near ships, sometimes out of curiosity, sometimes just because we happen to be in their path. What if she doesn't like us here? He shakes his head. If she wanted us gone, we'd already be gone. The whale rolls slightly, revealing lighter belly patches before sinking again. You feel the ship tilt as the displaced water moves. The sensation is unlike anything you've experienced, like the ocean itself shifting underfoot. A young sailor whispers, "Is it an omen?" Arnvid answers first. "Everything is an omen," but your father adds, "only if you fear it." The older men watch with calm respect. They have seen whales before, perhaps not often, but enough to understand their meaning. On land, the biggest creature you ever saw was an ox. Here, beneath your hull, swims something that could overturn the ship without noticing. Hoskuld folds his arms. In Iceland, a whale once surfaced so close to a trader's ship that its barnacles scraped planks clean. The sailors said it was like the ocean was sharpening a knife. Thorleif laughs. Sharpening or warning? Hoskuld shrugs. Either way, the ship made land 3 days later without a broken board. Everyone smiles faintly. Sailors live on stories because stories explain the unexplainable. The whale surfaces again, even closer. The eye is visible this time, a dark, ancient orb the size of a serving bowl looking not at the ship but through it, as if reading whether your presence means anything at all. For a brief moment, you lock eyes, and you understand something profound. This sea does not belong to people. It belongs to giants like this. A beast that lives longer than kingdoms, migrates farther than trade routes, and knows waters humans do not. The knarr creaks. Men shift their stance. The whale drifts forward, slow and silent, trailing a wide wake. Arnvid bows his head slightly, not a religious gesture, but one of mutual respect. Your father whispers, "Men draw maps. Whales carry the real ones in their blood." You imagine that migration paths as old as the world, navigated without compass, chart, or star table. Generations of whales passing the knowledge through instinct and memory the same way Vikings pass knowledge through words and scars. A soft splash draws your attention. A second whale surfaces farther away, smaller, younger. "A calf," one sailor says. "She's guiding it." Hoskuld nods. "Like our captain guides us." Thorleif grins. "Hopefully with fewer barnacles." Even the captain smiles lightly at that. The whales dive deeper this time, tails rising briefly before disappearing with a sound like heavy sails being folded. The sea ripples outward, then settles again. Silence returns, but not the same silence. A changed silence. The crew begins to move once more, men resuming work on ropes, bucket lines, sail trimming, drying clothes near the shielded embers. Life on the ship regains motion. But every now and then, someone glances out across the water. Once you've seen something ancient, the world feels different. Your father ruffles your hair lightly. "Not everything at sea tries to kill you," he says. "Some things remind you why it's worth surviving." You look over the waves, half hoping the whale will appear again, but the surface is smooth and empty. The message was delivered. The giants have moved on, the ship sails forward, and everyone aboard feels just a little smaller but not weaker, humbler, wiser. More aware of the ancient company that travels beneath the waves, unseen except when it chooses otherwise. The clouds finally begin to tear open, letting hard northern sunlight spill across the sea in pale, uneven beams. The ocean glitters, not warmly, not kindly, but brilliantly, like cold steel hammered flat. The air clears enough for Arnvid to stand fully and squint toward the horizon. The crew knows that look. Storms can push a ship miles off course in a single night, and without landmarks, charts, or instruments more complex than memory, a navigator must reclaim direction the moment conditions allow. Arnvid calls out, "Steady the tiller, bring her 2 degrees starboard." The helmsman adjusts the steering oar. The shift is subtle, but every man feels it. Their direction is changing. Their journey, though battered, continues forward. Your father nudges you. "Watch the navigator now." This is the truly difficult part. Arnvid removes a small object from a leather pouch hanging on his belt. You lean closer. It is a piece of wood, smooth and palm-sized, with runes carved across the surface. A sun shadow board. Hoskuld hums approvingly. "Sun compass, old even when our grandfathers were young." Arnvid kneels and fills a shallow wooden bowl with seawater. He places the shadow board in the center, a tiny upright peg sticking vertically from its middle. When the bowl floats freely, the board remains level even as the ship rolls beneath it. The peg casts a thin shadow across the carved surface, but only barely. The sun is low and clouds still move across it in ragged sheets. The shadow flickers and shifts. Arnvid waits, eyes narrowed, letting the peg stabilize. Some sailors glance in his direction. Most return to work, bailing water, checking lines, cleaning weapons, rotating watch. They don't need to watch Arnvid every time. They just need him to get it right. Hoskuld explains quietly. The angle of the shadow tells him where true north lies. You frown. But the sun moves. Of course, Hoskuld says, amused. That's why the board has rings and lines. It doesn't show where the sun is, it shows where north is supposed to be if the ship is on the correct heading. If the shadow falls wrong, we correct. Your father adds, and if the sky hides the sun, we remember. A good navigator always keeps the map in his skull. Arnvid watches the shifting shadow, then nods. Good light. He traces the shadow's direction with his fingertip, checks the engraved rings, and finally looks to the helmsman. Hold our heading, wind improving. The helmsman grins. I prefer steering when the sky isn't trying to drown us. Arnvid's mouth twitches once, his version of amusement, but the lesson isn't finished. He calls to you directly. You, come here. Your stomach tightens. The navigator rarely singles out anyone without purpose. You step beside him, boots braced against the rolling deck. He points to the peg's shadow. What direction does that tell you? You look at the carved rings, the markings, the angle, but the meaning isn't immediately obvious. Your confusion shows, and Arnvid doesn't scold. Instead, he speaks slowly like a man reciting old knowledge that must be passed down. The sun walks across the sky from east to west. Its shadow always points away from it. At midday, when the sun stands highest, the shadow is shortest. He traces the board with his finger. If the shadow points here, he taps a carved line, then we are facing north by the sun's summer path. It still feels like magic to you, but he continues. When clouds cover the sun, remember the ship's motion, the swell, the wind direction, and combine them. A navigator is not blind because the sky is hidden. He gestures to the rigging above. Feel the ropes, listen to how they hum. When the wind shifts 1 point, they change their song. Father folds his arms. Navigation is a sense, not a trick. Arnvid nods. Anyone can steer when the sun is bright. Only a true voyager continues when the world turns black. He places the shadow board back into its pouch and stands, bracing himself as the ship rolls again. The helmsman tightens his grip on the steering oar and whistles low. Feels like the wind's shifting northwest. Arnvid answers without looking up. It is, just 3 points. The helmsman doesn't ask how Arnvid knows. Changes course. Because when a navigator has spent 30 years reading waves, wind, and whale paths, the crew trusts him more than a kingdom's worth of maps. The sun grows brighter and shadows sharpen. Men on deck begin to peel off wet cloaks and hang them on lines strung between the stanchions. A few stretch arms and backs, shaking out stiffness gained from long bracing during the storm. Thorleif leans on a bale of rope and watches Arnvid walk. Man reads the world like a book, he murmurs. But he never acts like he's proud of it. Hoskuld snorts. He's proud, he just doesn't waste the energy showing it. Then Thorleif looks at you. Mark my words, boy, if you want to live long at sea, you listen to that one more than any war chief. The helmsman calls out. Wind steady. Arnvid lifts his chin slightly, acknowledging the report. Your father rests a hand on your shoulder. When the storm strips away everything else, navigation is the only thing that stands between survival and drifting into the world's edge. You look back at the horizon, a thin blue line where sky touches water, no land in sight, just the unknowable. If the navigator is wrong, the sea swallows the ship without witnesses. Arnvid looks out over the bow, one hand resting lightly on the rail. No maps, no charts, no ink, only sea, sky, and memory. The ship sails on, guided by a man who stares at the sun not as something distant, but as a compass drawn by gods long before Vikings ever built ships. Night at sea is not darkness. Darkness is simple, closing your eyes, blowing out a torch, shrouding a room. Night at sea is something else entirely. It is an endless, shifting void in every direction. A horizon that disappears. A world where up, down, distance, and time lose their edges. Where the only thing separating life from death is the deck beneath your feet and the men who stand sentinel while others sleep. Your turn on night watch comes sooner than you hoped. After a day of repairs, trimming the sail, and learning navigation from Arnvid, your muscles ache and your eyelids feel heavy as stone. But on a Viking ship, sleep is privilege, not guarantee. Hoskuld wakes you with a gentle but firm boot to the ribs. On your feet. Your father already took the earlier watch. Now it's your turn. The deck is cold beneath your hands as you push yourself upright. You wrap your wool cloak tight and follow him forward, boots thudding quietly on planks that still smell of salt and tar. The sky is almost clear, much clearer than earlier. Stars blaze overhead, thousands upon thousands. Out here, without city fire or land haze, their sharpness is startling. The Milky Way spreads across the dome of night like a spilled trail of powdered ice. One of the older sailors, Kalbrand, nods as you join him along the rail. Good, he says, rubbing warmth into his forearms. Extra eyes are always welcome. Another sailor, Bjarki, sits near the prow, staring outward as if he expects something to emerge from the black water at any moment. Hoskuld gives you your instructions. First rule of night watch, staring at blackness is useless. Look for movement. Look for change. The sea will not announce itself. You concentrate. The waves, barely visible, slap against the hull in soft, rhythmic pulses. The ship rolls gently, not the violent bucking of storm seas, but the long, slow breathing of the deep. Kalbrand leans closer. Night watch has dangers men don't speak of in loud voices. Hoskuld told me about fog, you say. Kalbrand shakes his head. Fog is generous, it lets you know it is there. He gestures toward the inky horizon. The real enemy is false movement, imagining a shadow. Thinking you see a crest where there is none. A nervous sailor can yell the ship awake over nothing. Then he taps his temple. Night watch is warfare not with the sea, but with the mind. You understand what he means an hour later. The first stretch feels purposeful. Your body is awake, eyes searching the dark. The ship creaks. The ropes hum. Someone coughs beside the mast. Everything feels anchored. But then your body begins to sag. Your knees loosen. Your vision blurs from fatigue. Shapes move that aren't moving. The sound of waves becomes monotonous, hypnotic even. You blink hard, trying to stay sharp. Kalbrand smirks. Now you feel it. The sea's lullaby. Fight it. He points upward. Use the stars. They keep you awake. You look up. The sky is a map, one you are only beginning to understand. Brighter than the others, the North Star holds still, unwavering. The rest rotate around it like a turning wheel. It feels ancient, dependable. How did men find their way before the North Star? You ask. Kalbrand whistles low. Some didn't. He scratches his beard. But others watched the sky long enough to find patterns. If the stars rise and set in this direction, then the coast must lie that way. Knowledge was bought with mistakes. Hoskuld joins in from behind. Long ago, a crew sailed so far south they lost the pole star entirely. What did they do? You ask. They rowed home. He shrugs as if this is obvious. Maybe to him it is. At the stern, the helmsman stands in silhouette, one hand on the steering oar, cloak fluttering in the cold wind. He is alone, eyes scanning the horizon constantly. There is no rest, no break. He is the hinge between sea and ship. A soft whistle comes from Bjarki at the bow. Hoskuld tenses. Kalbrand steps forward. What is it? Bjarki points to a faint glow far ahead. Just a subtle green shimmer low on the horizon. First you think it must be distant fire, but no fire burns on the sea. Then you realize aurora. The northern lights, not strong, just a faint sheet of green drifting slowly across the stars. But even the faintest aurora feels like the sky is breathing. Kalbrand exhales. Freyja is dancing tonight. Hoskuld nudges him. Or Odin is sharpening his spear. No one laughs, but they smile. At sea, the aurora is never ignored. Some believe it is spirit light. Some believe it is the souls of the fallen. Some say it is simply weather. Everyone believes something. For a few moments, the ship sails in silence. Even the waves quiet as if listening. The glow shifts, fading, returning, pulsing softly through the night. Then, as swiftly as it came, it dims and disappears. Bjarki mutters. Blessing or warning? Kalbrand replies. Both, probably. The watch continues and fatigue grows heavier. You fight the urge to lean on the rail or close your eyes. Hoskuld sees your struggle. Remember this, night at sea is not survived by strength. It is survived by attention. He taps your chest with 2 fingers. You fall asleep in here before you fall asleep in your eyes. Finally, after hours that feel like days, the next watch arrives. Fresh faces, groggy but functioning, begin taking positions along deck and rail. Hoskuld claps your shoulder. Go, sleep before the sea thinks of another test. You crawl beneath a fur-lined cloak near your father, body trembling from exhaustion and cold. As your eyes close, you realize something profound. Day teaches you about the sea. Night teaches you about yourself. You sleep like someone dropped into darkness from a great height. One moment your body collapses under a wool cloak, the ship rocking beneath you. The next moment someone is nudging your shoulder and the world returns in pieces, creaking planks, salt on your lips, the faint smell of tar, and the low beat of waves against the hull. It is morning. A gray morning, not bright, not warm, but stable. That counts as a blessing at sea. Your father crouches beside you, the set of his jaw firm but not unfriendly. Up, he says. There is a lesson today. You rub your eyes and struggle upright. Your muscles protest like rusted hinges. The previous days have turned your body into something both stronger and more worn. You grab your cloak, tighten it around your throat, and follow him toward the stern. A small group gathers around Arnvid. Even the seasoned sailors stand like students. Thorleif, Hoskuld, Bjarki, all attentive, all quiet. Arnvid holds a short wooden stick in his left hand and a coil of ship rope in his right. Hoskuld whispers with a grin, "When Arnvid teaches in good weather, you pay attention. He doesn't waste fair skies." The navigator drives the end of the stick into a bucket of seawater and waits. The rope hangs over the side, drifting just below the surface. He turns to the group. "Everyone thinks the sea is our enemy," he begins, voice level. "That is mistake number 1, Thorleif smirks. "Storms could fool us." Arnvid shakes his head. "A storm is not an enemy, it is a force, like winter, like aging, like time." He pulls the stick out of the bucket and lifts the rope from the water. "An enemy can be defeated, a force can only be respected." Hoskuld crosses his arms. "Tell the boy the second mistake." Arnvid taps the stick against the railing. The second mistake is thinking we conquer the sea just because we cross it. You frown. But we make land, we survive. Arnvid's eyes narrow. We survive because the sea allows it. You glance between him and the water. The statement feels large, almost like words carved into a saga stone. Your father nods quietly. No Viking truly believes he rules the ocean. We ride it like a man rides a wild horse. Even the best rider can be thrown. Arnvid continues. You want to navigate, then learn humility. If you believe you control the sea, you are already dead. He throws the rope back over the side and gestures to the waves. Look, the sea does not change for us. It does not speak our tongue. It does not care if we hate or praise it. The sea teaches one lesson. His voice drops barely above the sound of wind. You are small. No one argues. Even Thorleif seems subdued. A few minutes later, Arnvid points toward a distant swell line. What do you see? The helmsman answers. Wind shift. Arnvid nods. What else? You squint. The swell seems uneven, one set taller, one softer. Two winds? You guess. Arnvid looks directly at you. Yes. Then he explains, and suddenly you understand why even experienced sailors listen to him like students. The waves beneath us are older than the wind above us. Wind can change in a second, but swells remember storms far away. He traces the air with a finger. These long, rolling swells, they come from a storm beyond the horizon, maybe days old. Thorleif whistles. Meaning the sea is already telling us what tomorrow will feel like. Arnvid smiles faintly. Exactly. The sea always speaks early. Most men simply fail to listen. Your father claps you on the shoulder. Put this in your bones. If you learn to feel the sea before it shows itself, you live longer. Men disperse to tasks. You stay a moment longer, watching the swell. Now that it has been pointed out, you really can see it. Two sets of waves moving in slightly different directions. The short wind waves the long, slow ocean swells before they were only motion. Now they are information. Thorleif leans on the railing near you. You see now, the sea teaches all the time, but it does not teach gently. A shout comes from the bow. Dolphins, 3 of them. Men hurry to the rails, calling and laughing as sleek gray bodies arc through the water alongside the hull. They move with effortless grace, racing the ship's wake as if inviting a competition. Hoskuld grins. Good omen, dolphins mean clear waters and no predators, your father snorts. Or it means even they are bored today. The crew laughs not loudly, just enough to feel alive. Bjarki points as one dolphin leaps higher than the rest. If only we hunted like that, he mutters. We'd never miss. You notice something, the dolphins are using the swell, timing each leap, riding each crest. Same sea that nearly killed you 2 nights ago carries them like feathered driftwood. Humility, the lesson is everywhere. As the dolphins peel away and vanish back into deeper water, Arnvid returns to the tiller and adjusts course again. You approach him. Does the sea ever favor us? Arnvid considers the question for several heartbeats. Yes, he says at last, but only after it has broken us a few times. You swallow. That sounds harsh. Arnvid places the sun's shadow board in its pouch again. No, that sounds honest. He nods toward the horizon. Land people worship gods because they fear mystery. Sailors worship gods because they have met them. You look at the sea, not the storming monster you survived, not the calm plane it pretends to be now, but the true thing beneath, vast, unmoving in its purpose, older than belief. And you understand the navigator's point. The sea does not demand fear, it demands respect. 2 more days pass on the open sea, and the ship settles into a pattern that is almost comfortable, almost. The storm feels distant now. The deck is cleaner, the sail trimmed and flying proud, and the crew has their rhythm back. But now a different enemy begins to show itself. Not the sea, not the storms, not the cold. The human body. Hoskuld explains it bluntly while sharpening a small hand axe near the foremast. Men think they grow tired. Then the sea informs them what true tiredness is. You understand his meaning soon enough. Each day is a cycle of hauling lines, bailing water, scraping decks, cooking, repairing, rowing when the wind dies, keeping watch, sleeping in stolen scraps of time. There is no full night's rest. No long morning stretch. No time when the ship simply floats while everyone relaxes. The ocean demands constant attendance. Your body begins changing in ways you don't expect. Your hands, once soft, grow blisters that tear, then harden. Your forearms burn with the constant grip of rope. Your ribs ache from bracing against waves. Your legs feel rubbery from hours of standing on a deck that never stops moving. Kolbrand laughs as he watches you try to stretch muscles that feel like stretched rope. Good. Pain means you're learning. Then he pauses, rubbing his shoulder with a grimace. Pain also means you're not dead. Even seasoned men feel the strain. Hoskuld has begun to walk with a short stiffness in his left knee, old injuries from a raid years past. Thorleif spends every night kneading his lower back with a carved bone roller. Arnvid, who looks unshakable even in storms, coughs more now, voice growing rough from cold and salt. Only the sea never tires. Salt is its own enemy. There is a problem you didn't expect. Salt. Not seawater in the throat. Everyone knows not to drink that. Salt in other places. On skin and hair, in shirts, in boots, in rope burns, salt grinds like sandpaper. Every motion rubs another grain deeper. Your wrists, where rope and cloth fight for space, sting in patches. Your neck develops a raw line where your cloak ties. Salt gathers behind your knees, inside your elbows, and along the waistband of your trousers. Kalbrand shows you his forearm, scarred with dozens of pale white lines. Salt always wins, he says. Doesn't kill quickly, but it kills long. Sailors combat it by rinsing when possible, using precious fresh water to wipe exposed skin. Not for comfort, for survival. Food shrinks at first. The food stores seemed large. Barrels full of dried fish, hard bread, salt pork, stored cheese, oats, and dried berries. Now, after days at sea, the 6th barrel of cod is opened. Another cheese wheel shows mold that must be scraped off before eating. A crate of bread has softened from humidity. Hoskuld says nothing dramatic, only shrugs. No voyage leaves with more food than it needs. That's bad math. Arnvid adds, if the sea is kind, we catch fresh fish. If it is not, we eat less. Your stomach learns a new kind of hunger, not the sharp pangs of missed meals, but the dull, steady ache of never quite being full. Rowing begins again. Morning wind dies without ceremony. The sail goes slack. Arnvid frowns at the horizon. Not a breath until afternoon. The crew groans, not loudly, but with the weight of those who already know what comes next. Kettle calls, oars out. The long oars are unlashed and passed outboard through the ports. You take your assigned position, third on the starboard side. The handle is rough in your palms. The man ahead of you, a broad-shouldered sailor named Asger, taps the shaft twice. Row with rhythm, don't try to prove anything. The sea already knows your limits. The call comes, row. The ship lurches forward, not fast, but steadily. Oars dip, pull, rise, drip, dip, pull, rise, drip. The rhythm is hypnotic, almost meditative for the first 30 strokes. By stroke 100, your lower back burns, your palms scream, sweat trickles through salt-dried shirt cloth. Nobody talks, breath is needed for rowing. The drummer, a squat man with a shaved head, beats a steady cadence on a wooden block. Tum, 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 you row until arms shake. Then longer still. Time disappears. Your entire world becomes, don't stop, don't break rhythm, don't fall behind. Asger suddenly growls quietly. If you must vomit, do it overboard. It happens to everyone. You think he's joking. Then the man 2 oars behind you does exactly that, with barely a pause in his stroke. Weakness goes unshamed when the rowing finally stops. Men slump against the rail, chests heave, hands tremble. Nobody mocks anyone else. At sea, humiliation is useless. Survival is shared. Arnvid walks among the rowers. Good, you're still alive. That is the only measure that matters. Night rest is a battle, too. That night you try to sleep, but your arms twitch with leftover rowing motion. Your hands curl involuntarily as if still gripping the oar. Your body is exhausted, but the deck never stops shifting, the wind never stops humming, and your brain never fully shuts down. You wake twice thinking you've overslept your watch. Your father watches you settle again. The body breaks first, he says. The mind breaks second. The sea waits for whichever fails before the other. He lies down, eyes already closing. Your job is to make sure neither breaks at all. You lie awake for a long time, understanding something new. Storms are dramatic. Ocean monsters are terrifying, but the truest danger at sea is slow and quiet. Every mile tests your muscles. Every wave demands attention. Every day drains something. The sea does not need to kill you fast. It can kill you gradually. Unless you grow harder than you were before. The sea can roar like a beast, crush ships with mountains of water, hammer sails until they tear. But sometimes its deadliest weapon is nothing at all. Silence, windlessness, a horizon where the surface lies so still it looks like hammered bronze. Dead calm. Morning arrives with a strange feeling. The ship barely sways. The ropes hang motionless. The sail droops like a skin without bones. Even the gulls are gone. Arnvid steps to the rail and spits overboard. Bad. Thorleif nods grimly. The sea is too quiet. To most landsmen, calm seas mean safety. To sailors, calm seas are slow starvation, drifting off course and losing precious days to a sky that refuses to move. Hoskuld taps the mast with 2 knuckles. When the wind gives nothing, we must give everything. He looks across the deck. Oars again. A groan rises, not defiant, just weary. The muscles that only barely recovered from yesterday know what's coming. But Kettle, the captain, raises a hand. No. Save strength. He turns to Arnvid. Drift for now, we watch the skies. Arnvid agrees, though reluctantly. The ocean as a mirror, you lean over the side and see something you would never see on land, your reflection, not perfect, but clear enough. The surface is smooth as black glass, broken only by the creak of the rudder. Thorleif mutters, bad sign, the world should move. When the sea holds still, something sharp is thinking. You don't know if he's superstitious or fearful, but you understand. The motionlessness feels wrong. No wind, no push, no direction, just waiting. Heat without fire, the sun climbs higher, burning off the remaining clouds. The cold North Atlantic becomes humid, heavy, sticky. Sweat doesn't evaporate, it clings. Salt on your skin turns into paste. Your shirt sticks to your shoulders and ribs. Men peel off cloaks and shirts, hanging them to dry. Water is rationed even more carefully now. Without wind, thirst grows sharper. A sailor with a hollow laugh mutters, "The sea gives no wind but steals our spit." Hoskold wipes sweat from his brow. "Storms make you strong, calm seas try to make you stupid." He isn't joking. Dead calm causes, dehydration, slow thinking, lethargy, carelessness, depression, confusion of time and direction. Arnvid walks the deck with a pacing energy like a wolf unable to find a trail. "The sea should have a voice," he growls. "This silence is wrong." Managing morale to keep spirits sharp, the captain orders tasks. Clean the deck, oil the weapons, check every rope and peg. Men obey not because they want to, but because doing nothing is worse. Your father hands you a wooden bundle, a rag, whale oil, and the axe he has carried since before you were born. "Work the blade," he says, "not to sharpen it, just to remind yourself you still can." You kneel and oil the iron. The rhythmic work calms your nerves. Nearby, another sailor plucks a small harp from a leather wrap. The sound is faint and warbling, but it carries across the stillness. A few men mutter song verses. One tells a boastful story of hunting seals among drifting ice floes. Laughter returns, thin but real. Arnvid's wolf walk every few minutes. Arnvid climbs the gunwale and gazes in different directions, scanning sky, horizon, and water. He is restless like a navigator denied his tools. "If the wind does not return by night," he murmurs to the helmsman, "we set oars whether the men like it or not." The helmsman nods. "Sailors hate rowing," he says, "but they hate drifting more." The sea eyes them back later in the afternoon. Something touches the surface. You see at first just a faint V-shaped ripple spreading away from the hull. You blink. A dark dorsal fin cuts the surface, thin, triangular, silent. "Shark," you whisper. Within a moment others appear, circling not aggressively, but with that eerie slow patience sharks possess when the world is quiet. Kalbrand exhales. "They know the ship isn't moving. We look wounded." A chill runs through the crew even under the heat. Sharks don't attack ships, but they follow weakness. Thorleif tosses a fish spine overboard. Three shadows converge instantly. Arnvid speaks softly. Even the sea's hunters wait for their chance. The test of stillness. Hours pass. Sweat dries. Muscles stiffen. The ship seems to shrink in the vastness. One sailor sighs loudly. "I'd rather be in another storm." Another replies, "At least storms give you something to fight." Hoskold looks at you. "Remember this, storms test your strength. Calm seas test your discipline." He dips a ladle into the water cask, hands you a swallow, then takes one himself. A man who can survive boredom and waiting is rarer than a man who can survive waves. Distant signs just as the sun begins turning the western sky a copper color. Arnvid's head snaps upward. "Look!" The sails far above stir, not much, not enough to pull the ship, but the faintest flutter. Hoskold grins. Even a single breath of wind is hope. Arnvid watches the tension in the ropes. "More is coming, the sea is shifting again." Kettle nods. "Men, prepare the sail." Exhaustion vanishes. Spirits rise. Even the sharks drift away, losing interest the moment the ship begins to breathe again. And then a gust, just one but enough to push the prow half a degree. Arnvid smiles for the first time in hours. "Good, the world moves again." The crew releases a low cheer, not wild, not loud, but deeply relieved. Your father rests his hand on your shoulder. "This is what men forget. Life at sea is not endless action. Most of it is patience." As the sail fills and the ship begins to move once more, you understand. A storm can break a ship, but stillness can break the crew. Unless they bend, endure, and wait for the next breath of wind like Vikings always have. The wind does not return quickly. It teases the ship, nudging the sail with short, uneven breaths before dying again. The knarr moves, but only barely. By evening, the crew realizes they are still drifting far off the day's intended course. Kettle, the captain, stands near the stern, arms folded, eyes sharp. Arnvid joins him. They speak quietly at first, but soon Hoskold and several senior men gather as well. This is no crisis, not yet, but it is a crossroads. At sea, every hour lost can become days off course, especially with unknown currents beneath. Your father motions you closer. "Watch carefully. This is where captains earn loyalty or lose it." Two paths. Arnvid lays out the situation in simple terms. "The wind is unreliable. If we trust it, we may be pushed farther south. If we row, the men will lose strength." Kettle nods. "And we cannot afford weakness if another storm finds us." Hoskold spits into the sea. "I'd rather fight waves than laziness." Thorleif shakes his head. "Easy to say when your back still works." A few men snicker. Hoskold smirks, not angry, just tired. Arnvid looks to the sky. "We have an hour of light left. One decision must be made before night." Your father leans toward you. A ship is a small kingdom. When the king chooses wrong, nobody survives to argue. Voices from the crew kettle turns and does something many captains wouldn't. He asks the men, "Speak, fish or row?" A murmur goes through the deck. On a large warship, men might not speak openly. But here, on a merchant knarr with every life tied to every plank, voices matter. One sailor, broad-shouldered and sunburned, raises a hand. Fishing saves strength and fills the gut. Even sharks don't linger if the real hunters arrive. Another disagrees. If the wind returns and we are standing still, we'll lose miles we might need later. Thorleif cracks his knuckles. If we row now, we could reach better air faster. A younger sailor counters. If we exhaust ourselves now, we'll regret it when the night wants a fight. The arguments are not angry, just urgent. Because here on the ocean, every choice has teeth. Kettle makes the call, kettle listens without interrupting. When silence returns, he speaks. We fish. Some men sigh with relief. Others tighten their jaws. Arnvid nods once. The sea is stingy today. If we don't fill our bellies, we fight tomorrow half men. Hoskold almost smiles. And a man who fights the ocean half strong dies full. The decision stands. No vote, no debate after the ruling. Your father whispers. Good captains don't choose the easy option. They choose the one the sea allows. Preparing for the hunt, fishing gear is brought out. Weighted hand lines, bone and metal hooks, small bait jars, nets folded like blankets in calm seas. Fishing is opportunity. In windless seas, it is necessity. The men sit along the rails, lines cast overboard. You are paired with Kalbrand, who hands you a short, stiff line. Hold here, he says. If you feel 3 shakes, not 1, not 2, pull. You nod, wrapping the line around your fingers. The sea is strangely quiet at this height. No splash, no wave slap, just the muffled murmur of distant water. Minutes pass. The sun lowers, turning the ocean gold. Kalbrand grins suddenly. Fish under the hull. He tugs once, then twice, then a third sharp flick. His line snaps tight. With a grunt he hauls, and a writhing silver body breaks the surface, a fat cod. He swings it over the rail, where Hoskold clubs it cleanly with a practiced strike. Good sign, Hoskold mutters. Soon more lines tug. Some catch, some miss, some bring up nothing but kelp. You stare down at your own lifeless thread, unsure if patience or skill is what's missing. Then a sharp pulse. 1, 2, 3, you pull and feel weight. The line jerks wildly and you scramble to keep grip. Kalbrand braces behind you, guiding your hands. Don't yank, drag. You haul with rhythm, and finally the fish breaks the surface, bigger than Kalbrand's. The men chuckle approvingly. Hoskold clubs it clean. Your first fish at sea. Thorleif claps your shoulder. Only 1,000 more and we'll eat like kings. Sunset lessens by the time the sky turns purple and distant stars flicker awake. The ship has caught. 4 large cod, 3 smaller, haddock, 1 unlucky herring that somehow took a hook meant for something 10 times its size, not a feast, but enough. Kettle orders the small fire bowl uncovered. A few fish are cleaned immediately, heads and guts tossed back to the sea, an offering as old as boats. Arnvid speaks while sharpening a small gutting knife. The ocean feeds us only when it chooses. Tonight it was generous. Hoskold snorts. Generous, we worked for every bite. Arnvid smiles faintly. Even generosity must be earned. The fish cooks with herbs and a thin smear of butter. The smell alone is enough to make tired mouths water. Men eat with quiet satisfaction, no songs, no boasting, just the relief of food earned through patience. You tear off a piece of steaming cod. It tastes nothing like dried stores. It tastes alive. Your father leans close. Remember this night, it shows how a crew survives when the world gives nothing. You nod, chewing slowly. He continues. Storms are loud, they teach fast. Calm seas teach slowly. Many men fail the quiet test. You look around the deck. Men wiping fish oil from their hands, nets drying in the faint wind. Arnvid staring at the horizon again, reading for hints. Kettle drinking a swallow of ale. Eyes calm, the ship is tired, but not defeated. The choice was made. The sea accepted it. A final reminder before sleep, Arnvid addresses the crew. Tonight was not luck. Luck is what saves fools. Skill is what feeds survivors. He points at the horizon. If the wind rises, we sail. If not, we row. But we move forward. Men nod. Your father speaks the final truth of the evening. A Viking does not control the wind. A Viking controls what he does while waiting for it. The deck becomes quiet. The sea remains calm, but the crew feels ready again, not because the world is easier, but because they faced it with choice, discipline, and unity. Not every danger at sea has teeth. Some dangers creep quietly on soft feet, wearing a human face, speaking with a familiar voice. They come from inside the ship, not outside it. And when they strike, they spread faster than storms, weaken faster than hunger, and linger longer than fear. Illness. It begins on the second morning after the fishing. The wind has returned, steady, reliable, pushing the knarr northwest once more. Spirits are decent. Bodies are sore but functioning. The sea breathes normally again, but Kalbrand, usually loud, usually smiling, sits hunched near the mast, one hand gripping his stomach. Hoskold notices first. Kalbrand. You look greener than the fish we gutted. Kalbrand manages a laugh, but it is shallow, weak. Think something didn't settle right, Thorleif smirks. You ate more than all of us combined, that's the price of greed. But as the morning grows, Kalbrand doesn't improve. His forehead shines with sweat, his breaths come shallow. His usual humor fades into grim silence. Your father kneels beside him, presses the back of his hand to Kalbrand's cheek, then his neck. Hot, he mutters. Nearby sailors exchange looks, not fearful but wary. Fever on a ship is no small matter. On land, sickness spreads from house to house. At sea, a crew is one house, one room, one family in a wooden world with nowhere to walk away. Arnvid approaches. How long? Kalbrand swallowed. Started in the night, thought it was just the fish. Hoskuld frowns. Everyone ate the fish. Your father shakes his head. Could be exhaustion, dehydration, or something older. Older. A word sailors do not like. The sea takes advantage of weakness. Kettle arrives, expression tightening as he studies Kalbrand. Separate him, not far, just enough. Two sailors help Kalbrand to the shaded area beneath the aft awning, where the captain keeps spare cloth, tools, and a few dried herbs. Kalbrand groans as he lies down, clutching his middle. Your father gives you a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Hot stones. Heat helps the gut. You fetch the bundle from the fire bowl and deliver it. Kalbrand presses it against his abdomen, teeth gritted. Thorleif stands near him. Don't die, I owe you 5 silver from the knucklebone game. Kalbrand tries to smile, it looks like pain. Containment as midday arrives, another sailor begins coughing. Bjarki, the sharp-eyed young man who always takes first bow watch. Arnvid steps in quickly. That's 2. Kettle exhales slowly. Then we isolate both, Bjarki protests weakly. It's nothing, just salt in the throat. But when he stands, his knees buckle slightly. Hoskuld catches him before he hits the deck. The crew is silent. Salt in the throat does not weaken the knees. Fear without panic. Sailors gather near midships, eyes watching the sick men. No shouting, no panic. Vikings are not strangers to death, but illness at sea spreads in ways swords do not. Your father speaks to the crew. We've seen worse, keep distance, don't share cups. Wash hands in seawater before touching rope or food. Thorleif blinks. Seawater helps, your father shrugs. It's better than nothing, Arnvid nods. Do not touch your eyes after cleaning fish, don't wipe sweat with bare hands, stay sharp. Rules become routine within minutes. Even at sea, discipline is survival. The strain of worry as afternoon passes. Kalbrand worsens, his breath rasps. His face darkens with pain. Bjarki's cough deepens into sharp spasms. You sit nearby, handing water carefully from a horn cup. Kalbrand opens his eyes slightly. You're supposed to be learning navigation, not nurse maiding old men. You shake your head. You're not old. He huffs a laugh that turns into a groan. I've seen 20 more winters than you, that's old enough. He grips your wrist suddenly, eyes sharp despite the fever. Listen to me if this spreads. But then he stops, breath hitching. Your father steps in. No talk of spreading, rest. Kalbrand relaxes only slightly. Natural remedies. Vikings do not have medicine, not in the way healers in far southern lands do. But they have traditions. Hoskuld brings crushed dried ginger from a pouch. For the gut. Arnvid provides a small amount of dried yarrow. For fever. Thorleif hands over a carved wooden charm. For luck, he says, though his voice holds no jest. They mix the herbs into warm water and feed it slowly to Kalbrand and Bjarki. Some of the older men mutter quiet prayers, to Ire, goddess of healing, to Thor for strength, to Freya for peace, not loudly, not dramatically, just sincerely. The captain's burdened kettle watches from the stern, jaw set like carved oak. A sick crew is a vulnerable crew. A vulnerable crew is a lost voyage. Arnvid murmurs to him, we must not let fear take more men than illness does. Kettle nods. We'll ride the wind steady, no rowing until they recover. Then he turns to you. Helped Kalbrand earlier, now help Bjarki, keep him drinking, keep him warm. Your heart beats harder, helping the sick feels more dangerous than storms. But you obey, nightfall tension as darkness approaches, the sky dims to a bruised purple. The wind remains steady mercifully, but the mood of the crew shifts. Conversations short, jokes fade, men eat without appetite. Eyes flick to the sick men more often than to the waves. Kalbrand sleeps fitfully, groaning. Bjarki coughs until his ribs shake. Your father watches both with a grimness you've never seen in him before. Hoskuld stands beside him. Seen this before? Your father asks. Twice, Hoskuld says. Once half the ship sickened, once only 2. And the result? Different both times. It's not comforting. A quiet decision later that night after the stars appear, Arnvid speaks quietly with Kettle. If more fall ill, we turn back. Kettle's jaw tightens. I know. The sea around the ship is endless, but suddenly the knarr feels small, too small. A floating village with sickness in 2 corners. Your father sits beside you as you take the last chair at Bjarki's side. Even this is part of the voyage, he says. Not the storms, not the whales, not the sharks. He nods at the sick men. This, he meets your eyes. The ocean tests the body, illness tests the crew. Bjarki coughs again. Kalbrand shivers despite heat. And you understand, storms test strength. Calm seas test patience. Illness tests unity. Survival depends on all three. Night drags on heavy and slow like wet rope pulled hand over hand. No clouds, no wind change, just the rhythmic lantern glow from the fire bowl and the sound of Bjarki coughing until it seems his ribs might crack. By dawn, Kalbrand's fever has broken slightly. Enough for him to speak, enough for him to groan, enough for hope to flicker. Bjarki worsens. His breaths come thin and wheezing as if he is trying to swallow air through a cracked reed. Kettle steps toward the infirm corner, brows drawn low. "How is he?" he asks. Your father answers carefully, "Still fighting." That is the truth, but it is not comforting. Hoskold crouches beside Bjarki, placing a rough hand on the young man's forehead. The old sailor's face softens, a rare expression. "He's too young to go, the sea shouldn't take boys." Bjarki's cracked voice tries to rise. "I'm not a boy." Thorleif kneels beside him, chuckling gently. "Then prove it, live. Only men survive voyages like this." Bjarki attempts a smile, but fails. His breathing rasps in and out like a dull saw. The crew gathers by midday. Almost the entire crew clusters around the sick men. Not crowding, just close enough that you feel the weight of unspoken worry thick as fog. Arnvid stands slightly apart, arms folded. You realize he is calculating, not callously, but practically. Spurs to Kettle, "If he worsens, we must act." Kettle nods sharply. "Not yet." A hard truth later, as you bring warm water to Kalbrand, he grips your wrist with surprising strength. "Listen, lad," his voice is hoarse hollow. "You must understand something. At sea we share danger, but we also share choices." His eyes close as he breathes through pain. "If the sickness spreads, the healthy must protect the ship, even if it means hard decisions." You know what he means: isolation, quarantine. Distance from the sick, not abandonment, never abandonment, but a controlled boundary between life and death. A quiet dread settles in your chest. The sacrifice begins that evening. Kettle gathers the crew. The sick men lie beneath the awning, shivering and coughing. Everyone else forms a half circle near the mast. Kettle speaks plainly. "We protect them, but we protect the crew too." He points toward the awning. "Only 3 men will tend the sick. No one else touches food or water afterward. No shared tools, no shared blankets." He looks at you. "You are one of the 3. Your stomach flips. "Him?" Thorleif asks, surprised. "He's young." "Exactly," Kettle says. "Young means strong, less likely to fall." Your father steps forward immediately. "I will be the 2nd." Kettle nods. "Expected." Then Arnvid steps up. "I will be the 3rd." Heads turn surprised. Navigators rarely expose themselves to illness. They are too valuable. Hoskold mutters, "Old fool, you should stay clear." Arnvid's eyes narrow. "Navigation means nothing if we lose half the men to sickness." Kettle places a hand on Arnvid's shoulder. 3, no more. No one else aids them directly." He looks across the deck. "Everyone else will take extra duty, cooking, rowing, trimming the sail, repairing gear. The caretakers must not touch anything outside that awning." The men nod. They understand. Sacrifice must come from all sides. The new routine your father, and Arnvid form a silent triad. The work is delicate. Heating stones, mixing herbs, giving water in slow sips, cleaning sweat and vomit, changing blankets, whispering encouragement, keeping distance from the rest of the ship. Arnvid keeps a soaked cloth wrapped around his face. Not superstition, but wise caution. Your father ties wool over his mouth. You follow. Bjarki's fever climbs. Kalbrand mutters in his sleep. The ship feels smaller than ever. The cost of kindness. Hoskold approaches the edge of your quarantine boundary with 2 bowls of broth. He keeps his distance. "No closer," Arnvid warns. Hoskold grumbles but obeys, placing the bowls on the planks. "They need strength," he says. You nod. "So do you." He waves dismissively. "We'll manage." But when he turns, his shoulders slump with exhaustion. A quiet conversation hours later, while tending Kalbrand's sweat-soaked blankets, your father speaks softly. "This is the hardest part of sea life. Not storms, not rowing, not cold." He rings a cloth over the side. "This," he nods toward Bjarki. "Watching people suffer and not knowing if your help is enough." You swallow against a tightness in your throat. "What if he dies?" Your father doesn't answer right away. Finally, he exhales. "Then we make sure the sea does not take anyone else with him." Bjarki's whisper late at night. You sit beside Bjarki, wiping his forehead. His eyes flutter open. "You don't have to stay," he murmurs. "Yes," you say. "I do." He tries to smile. "Vikings aren't supposed to be gentle." You shake your head. "Vikings take care of their own." He closes his eyes, trust written across his bruised face. A moment of fragile hope just before dawn breaks. Something changes. Bjarki's breathing eases slightly. Kalbrand stops shivering. Their skin cools, not much, but enough. Arnvid checks their pulses and nods once. "They are fighting back." Your father lets out a long breath. "Then we fight with them." Kettle approaches from the shadows, hands behind his back. "How are they?" Arnvid answers. "Alive." The captain nods. "Then the sea has not beaten us yet." And for the first time in 2 days, a hint of warmth touches the ship, not from the sun, not from the wind, but from the crew's shared relief. They suffered together, they endured together, they protected their weakest together. Vikings survive storms with strength, but they survive illness with sacrifice. Morning rises pale and uncertain, like a sickly sun peering through thin northern mist. The ship rocks gently, too gently. The sea is calm, but the mood remains tight as rope pulled across frost. You are still in the quarantine corner with your father and Arnvid. Bjarki sleeps at last, breath shallow but steadier. Kolbrand dozes, muttering occasionally but no longer burning with fever. There is progress. There is hope, but fate at sea never moves in straight lines. The first sign something is wrong, Thorleif approaches the quarantine boundary, staying a safe distance. His expression is not fear, but something worse, forced calm. Kettle wants Arnvid at the bow, Thorleif says. Now Arnvid stiffens. Why? Thorleif hesitates. Because the sea is changing. Arnvid exchanges a glance with your father. Stay with them, he says. Don't let Bjarki get cold. Your father nods. Arnvid steps away, careful not to brush against anyone, and follows Thorleif toward the bow. Their conversation is hushed, urgent. You watch their silhouettes until they vanish around the mast. A knot forms in your stomach. Something is brewing. The whisper of wind. Minutes pass, then a shift. A faint change in the air, like the sea inhaling slowly. Your father notices it too. He lifts his head. Feel that? He asks. The breeze touches your cheek, not soft, not sharp, but deliberate, as if awakening. At first it seems welcome. Wind means speed. Wind means distance from sickness. But then Kettle's voice cuts across the deck. All hands to positions. Your father tenses. That's not a routine call. The gathering force. You step to the quarantine rope, watching from behind its invisible barrier. Kettle stands at the bow, cloak whipping in a breeze that strengthens by the heartbeat. Arnvid grips the rail beside him, studying the horizon. From where you stand, the sea looks normal, blue-gray, calm, endless. But the air, it thickens, strengthens, builds. Your father mutters, it's shifting too fast. Hoskuld shouts from midships. Sails are straining. 2 men sprint to adjust the ropes. Thorleif yells, westward gust, changing again. Then another call, now north. The wind is turning fast, wild, confused. Your father whispers a word you rarely hear him say. Unnatural. Arnvid's revelation. Kettle waves Arnvid back toward the center of the ship. Arnvid speaks loud enough for the crew to hear. The warm air from the south meets cold air rising from the north. This patch of sea is unstable. Hoskuld grunts. That means storm. Arnvid shakes his head. No, something worse. The crew freezes. What is worse than a storm? Someone asks. Arnvid turns slowly, scanning the horizon. A squall. A squall, not the days-long fury of a storm, not the predictable violence of high winds, but a sudden, vicious, short-lived burst of chaos, a fist of weather rather than a wave of it. Fast, sharp. Unforgiving, Kettle raises his voice. Prepare the sail, get the sheets tight. The caretaker's dilemma. You turn back to Bjarki and Kolbrand. Bjarki stirs at the noise. What's happening? Wind, you say softly. Strong wind. Kolbrand tries to sit up but groans. Go, he rasps. Help them. You don't move. Your father crouches beside the sick men. You stay, he says firmly. If illness spreads now, we lose everything. But the storm, you begin. Your place is here. You clench your fists. The ship needs hands, but these men need life. And your oath, spoken by action, not words, ties you to them. The twist, then something happens that no one expects. The temperature drops sharply. The wind dies just for a moment. A horrible, heavy silence falls. Arnvid's voice cuts through it. Brace! The sea changes shape, like muscles flexing beneath a great skin. Then a towering wall of wind crashes sideways across the ship. Not rain, not waves, wind. A horizontal blast so violent it snaps 2 ropes instantly and slams the sail with the force of a hammer. The entire knarr tilts violently. You fall to your knees. The sick men slide toward the rail. Your father lunges, grabbing them both and anchoring himself against the mast board. Shouts explode across the deck. Grab the lines. Secure the bow. We're listing. Hold the mast. The squall strikes from the east, then from the north. Then from behind, a rotating whip of air. The ship creaks, screams, bends. For a heartbeat, you fear the mast will snap clean in half. Courage in chaos, Arnvid clamps onto the rigging, shouting instructions. Loosen the sheets, let the wind through. Kettle roars. Not too much, we'll lose control. Thorleif and Hoskuld sprint along the deck like men possessed, grabbing flailing ropes and tightening knots that immediately try to tear free again. The sea itself seems confused, waves forming in random directions, slapping against the hull out of rhythm. Your father shouts, hold them. You press your weight against Bjarki, helping keep him on the bedroll. Another wind surge hits, this time from the opposite side. The ship sways at a terrifying angle. A barrel breaks loose and rolls across the deck, smashing into a wooden peg with a thunderous crack. Men curse, shout, strain. The sky darkens unnaturally fast. Kolbrand clutches your arm. What is happening? You shake your head. I don't know. And then, just as suddenly, As fast as it struck, the squall weakens, not slowly, not gradually. It collapses. The wind vanishes as if someone snuffed it out. Silence drops again, but not peaceful silence. The silence that follows violence. Arnvid lowers his hands. Kettle breathes hard. The men slump against the rails, panting, sweating, shaken. Your father checks the sick crew. "You're alive," he whispers, voice trembling with relief. "We're all alive," Bjarki groans. "That was worse than fever." Kalbrand actually laughs, a broken, breathy sound. Storms are jealous, they want attention. The deck is a mess, ropes everywhere, 2 broken pegs, 1 torn sheet, and an entire crew rattled to the bone. Kettle looks at Arnvid. "It came from nowhere," Arnvid nods, "and it will come again. Because squalls don't travel alone, they come in packs, and the next one might strike even harder. The sea holds its breath. Not a ripple touches the hull, not a breeze lifts a strand of hair." The crew stands scattered across the deck, panting, pale, eyes wide. The ship creaks softly, complaining, aching like a living thing struck too hard. Thorleif breaks the stillness first. "That wasn't a storm," he mutters. "It was a giant slapping us." Hoskold spits overboard. "That was not the giant, that was just his warning." A ripple of uneasy laughter passes through the men, thin, shaky, but enough to loosen nerves. Kettle raises his voice. "Check the mast!" The command jolts everyone back to motion. Because if the mast is damaged, if even one hidden crack runs down its spine, the voyage is finished. Assessing the damage, 2 sailors climb the rigging with the speed of men climbing toward hope. Others fan out, inspecting ropes, checking pegs, lifting tools that rolled during the squall. Arnvid crouches near the base of the mast, eyes narrowed. He runs his fingers along the wood, pressing, tapping, listening. Your father watches him. "Cracked?" he asks quietly. Arnvid shakes his head. "No, but stressed, very stressed." Kettle kneels beside them. "How long until we know for sure?" Arnvid stands slowly. "We'll know when the next gust hits." Your stomach drops. There will be another gust, another squall maybe minutes away, and the ship must be ready when it comes. Back in the quarantine corner, you return to Kalbrand and Bjarki. Kalbrand whispers, "That wind, that wasn't natural." Bjarki coughs weakly. "See spirits angry." You shake your head. "It was weather, not spirits," but your voice lacks certainty. Your father kneels between you. "Keep them warm, keep them steady." "But the ship," you start. "You stay," he repeats firmly. "Your duty hasn't changed." Duty, responsibility, sacrifice. Even the storm doesn't excuse abandoning them. The crew works against time. The rest of the crew moves like an injured but determined machine. Ropes are untangled, broken pegs, replaced, water barrels secured, nets knotted tightly. The torn sail sheet is stitched with furious speed. Thorleif pulls 2 men aside to help him tighten the lines meant to relieve strain from the mast. He works with his jaw clenched, muttering curses at the sky. Hoskold inspects the hull for new leaks. When he doesn't shout, everyone exhales. If Hoskold stays quiet, the ship is still holding. Arnvid stands in the center of the deck, eyes fixed on the changing sky, studying the faint bruises of cloud forming far to the east. A hard conversation. Your father returns to the boundary of the quarantine zone. He kneels and whispers, "You need to hear this." You lean closer. "That squall came too fast, too sharp." You frown. "What does that mean?" "It means we're near a weather line. A dividing place in the sea, a place where warm and cold air battle each other." You glance toward the faint horizon. "How far is that from land?" Your father's expression tightens. "Far." Kalbrand groans and turns on his side. Bjarki murmurs, "We should go back." Your father's jaw sets. "If the wind turns against us, going back is impossible." The second warning, Arnvid suddenly shouts, "Gust from the south, prepare." The crew jumps to ready positions. Your heart leaps to your throat. You brace yourself, arms around Bjarki as your father steadies Kalbrand. The wind arrives, but it is not a squall, just a steady, strong push, fast but not violent. Arnvid raises a hand. "No, wait, this one is steady." Kettle nods. "This is good wind, use it." Relief washes across the deck like a cool wave. Turning setback into strength, Kettle calls out, "HOSKULD, THORLEAF, mast supports." Thorleif adjusts the ropes, pulling them to balance pressure. Hoskold double checks every knot, every peg. 2 younger sailors hoist the repaired section of sail. The cloth catches wind and holds. A cheer rises, small but sincere. Arnvid turns toward the stern. "Hold this course," he tells the helmsman. "To where?" the helmsman asks. Arnvid's eyes narrow. "Where the sea stops trying to kill us." Your father chuckles softly. "That's always good direction." The unity grows stronger. You watch the crew moving with renewed purpose. Fear has not vanished. Exhaustion remains heavy. Illness lingers in the corner. But when the rope snapped, they tied it. When the wind slammed the sail, they controlled it. When the sea tested them, they answered. This is how Vikings survive, not by overpowering the ocean, but by outlasting it. You feel something shift inside you, a realization. You are no longer simply witnessing the voyage. You are part of its survival. A calm before the real fight. The sea smooths out again. The wind stabilizes. The ship finds its rhythm. Kettle walks the deck, inspecting every face. When he reaches the quarantine corner, he stops and studies Kalbrand and Bjarki. "How long until they stand?" Kettle asks. Your father answers honestly, "Days," Kettle sighs. "Then we protect them until then." He turns toward the mast. "And we pray the sea grants us that time." Arnvid joins him. "It won't," he whispers. "The squall was only the opening blow." Kettle doesn't flinch. "Then we hit back." He looks west toward the uncertain darkening line on the horizon. "Because we must." The crew follows his gaze. The horizon is not normal, not safe, not quiet. Something huge is forming out there, something larger than the squall, not wind, not calm, something with teeth, and the ship sails straight toward it. The horizon changes the way a wolf shows its teeth, slowly at first, then all at once. A dark smear appears far to the west. It folds and swells, thickening like ink in water. The crew watches it silently, every man knowing exactly what it means without needing a single spoken word. Not a squall, not a gust line, not shifting air. This is a storm, a real one, a monster. Kettle grips the rail. "We outrun it if we can." Arnvid shakes his head. "We can't." Hoskold squints at the sky. "That thing is eating the horizon." Your father mutters. "No storm forms that fast unless the gods are listening." The sea under the ship remains deceptively calm, but the sky tells the truth. The clouds stack in towering columns, gray at the base, black at the core, glowing faintly blue where lightning hides behind their bellies. Bjarki stirs beside you, still weak. "What's happening?" You brush hair from his forehead. "Nothing you need to fear, just rest." He sees the look in your eyes anyway. "Storm." You do not deny it. Preparation Kettle strides across the deck with the certainty of a man who has met storms before and survived them. Not because he was stronger, but because he was smarter. "Listen up," he bellows. Every sailor freezes. "We cut weight." Hoskold nods, understanding instantly. "Drop the spare lumber. Drop anything that isn't food, weapons, or sail repairs," Kettle commands. Thorleif and two others haul the last damaged barrel to the rail and heave it overboard. It splashes once and disappears. Coils of extra rope, cracked poles, two broken oars into the sea. Hoskold pushes a carved wooden chest toward the edge. "What's that?" Thorleif asks. "Something I don't need more than I need to live." He doesn't explain. The chest goes over. Inside the safe corner, you kneel beside Kalbrand as the deck thuds with discarded gear. "You hear that?" Kalbrand whispers. "Yes." "Storms," he says, "are honest. You can feel their approach. Sickness, trickier." You smile faintly. "Does that make you braver now?" "No," Kalbrand groans. "It makes me hate lying still." He tries to sit up, fails, then laughs breathlessly. "Still alive, though." Bjarki tries to grin too, but breaks into a coughing fit. Your father lifts him gently, letting him breathe easier. Arnvid calls toward you from the deck. "Keep them low, keep them sheltered, tie them if you must." Tying people to the ship sounds brutal, but at sea it means survival. The sky breaks open. The first blast of wind hits like a warning strike, sharp, sudden, tugging at cloaks and whipping ropes into snapping arcs. A second blast follows, stronger. Then the third comes and the ship lurches sideways, bow cutting deeper into the water. Sailors scramble along the deck, grabbing lines, digging heels into wood. Kettle roars, "Tighten the main sheet." Thorleif jerks a rope so hard the cords cut into his palms. Blood spills instantly. He doesn't even flinch. "Get the sail down to half." Two men climb the rigging, clinging like barnacles as the sail thrashes wildly. They work fast, lowering the cloth just enough to keep speed without letting the wind tear it to pieces. Arnvid barks, "Hold her steady, point the bow into the wind." The helmsman strains at the tiller, muscles bulging, teeth clenched. The ship obeys, but barely. Lightning a crack splits the sky. White fire snakes across black clouds. Kalbrand gasps. Thor is awake. Your father murmurs quietly, "Then let him watch." Lightning flashes again and again, each strike closer than the last. The ocean glows for a heartbeat, then drops back into darkness. Then comes the thunder, a rolling, bone-deep roar that shakes the very boards of the knarr. Bjarki lifts a trembling hand over his ears. "Too loud." You cover him with a blanket, whispering, "It can roar, we don't break." The first wave the crew barely has time to brace before a wall of water rises in front of the ship, tall as a house, angry as a giant. Arnvid shouts, "Bow UP!" The helmsman yanks the tiller too late. The wave crashes over the deck. Water slams you back, soaking everything. Bjarki cries out. Kalbrand grips a rope in terror. Your father shields both men with his body. Up on deck, sailors cling to anything they can grab, hatch edges, mast, roots, railings. Two men are swept off their feet. Hoskold grabs one by the ankle, slamming him back against the planks. The other is carried halfway toward the rail before Thorleif lunges and drags him back. No one is lost, but the storm has only just begun. The ship's cry the knarr groans as the next gust slams into it. The mast bends dangerously too far. Arnvid shouts, "Release the top line!" Kettle echoes the order, voice cutting through the chaos. Two men pull a release peg, the rope snaps free, The sail loosens just enough to save the mast. But the sudden slack nearly knocks one of the men overboard. Thorleif grabs him, growling, "Not today!" The storm wins nothing easily. The sea rises higher now, black hills tipped with white. Each wave crashes, shaking the ship like a toy. Lightning illuminates, ropes snapping, water barrels slamming, sailors crawling, a world of pure chaos, and through it all, Kettle stands like a carved god on the deck, shouting orders with a voice louder than thunder. Your father ties Bjarki down with a rope across his waist, gentle but firm. "You're not going anywhere," he says. Bjarki nods weakly. Kolbrand grips your hand. "If this ship lives, we live." You squeeze back. "We will." The worst part, then the wind changes direction. Suddenly, violently, unpredictably, Arnvid shouts something, but the storm swallows his voice. A massive wave forms on the ship's blind side. It rises, it curls, it falls, and the world goes white. That is all you see at first, a blinding, violent white as the wave crashes over the ship with the force of a falling mountain. Cold needles stab your skin. The world turns upside down. You hear nothing but roaring water in your ears, inside your skull, inside your lungs. You cling to the nearest rope with both hands, legs kicking in empty space. Your father shouts something muffled, distant, drowned by chaos. Bjarki screams. Kolbrand curses. The ship groans louder than all of you. Then the wave passes. The knarr shudders, shedding water like a wounded beast. You gasp for air, cold, sharp, painful. The deck is flooded ankle deep. But you are alive. The sick men are alive. The crew is alive for the moment. The storm finds its teeth. Lightning forks across the sky again, closer now, so close you feel heat in the air. Thunder cracks like the splitting of mountains. Rain descends in sideways torrents, soaking everything instantly. Kettle, drenched and wild-eyed, points toward the bow. "Face it, into the waves." "Don't let her turn." The helmsman fights with the tiller as if wrestling a bear. Two other sailors throw their weight behind him. The storm has one goal: to broadside the knarr and flip it like a toy. Arnvid clutches the mast, studying the waves through stinging rain. "Beware the trough," he shouts. "The deep will swallow anything." Thorleif tightens the mainsheet, muscles bulging, veins popping. His injured hands bleed freely, but he doesn't stop. Hoskuld lashes a loose peg back into place, teeth clenched so tightly he might crack them. The ship bucks like a living creature, lifting, dropping, fighting, refusing. Below the awning, your father ties another rope around Bjarki's chest, securing him to the mast base. Kolbrand grips the supports with white-knuckled desperation. "Tell me this ends," Kolbrand rasps through chattering teeth. "It ends," your father says. "It ends because we endure it." You try to shield Bjarki with your body as another spray of icy water hits. He trembles violently, teeth clicking. "Hold on," you whisper. "Hold on." The storm tests every man. The next wave rises higher, taller than the mast, towering, monstrous. It blocks the entire horizon. Arnvid sees it first. "Brace," Kettle echoes. "Hold." The crew grips lines, railings, hooks, anything they can. The wave collapses onto the knarr. The ship doesn't just tilt, it dives, the bow plunging down so steeply you feel your stomach lift into your chest. Loose tools skid past you. A shield crashes into the railing. You hear wood bending, stretching, threatening to snap. For a heart-stopping moment, the entire knarr seems to freeze at a nearly vertical angle. And then it rises, slowly, shaking, groaning, but rising. The men shout with relief, but not victory. There is no victory in a storm like this. Only survival. The breaking point, minutes or hours, you can't tell, pass like a blur of rain, wind, screams, commands, and thunder. Then a terrible sound cuts through everything. Crack, everyone stops. The mast. Arnvid dives toward it, running his hands along the base. Kettle shouts, "Well." Arnvid looks up. "It's splitting." Hoskuld bellows, "Reinforce, get the ropes around it." Men scramble, ropes fly, pegs hammer. The mast wobbles like a wounded limb. If the mast goes, the ship goes with it. Thorleif screams over the wind, "Tighten, tighten." You watch as the entire crew gathers around the mast, every hand pulling, gripping, forcing strength into the wood. Even sick Kolbrand reaches out, fingers brushing a rope, lending the last of his strength. Your father hauls another line, face twisted in effort. And slowly, inch by inch, the mast stabilizes, not fully, not safely, but enough. The storm's last fury, the storm gives one last scream, a howl of wind powerful enough to rip cloth and snap bones. One final monstrous wave rises in front of the knarr. Arnvid roars, "Straight into it!" Kettle bellows, "Hold fast!" The wave hits. The ship launches upward, slamming into the crest like an arrow-piercing armor. Deck tilts, the ropes strain, the mast threatens to snap, the hull creaks like a dying animal. And then the knarr bursts through the top of the wave, water exploding behind it like shattered glass. The wind howls again, then stops, suddenly, completely. The silence after rain softens to a drizzle, lightning fades, thunder rolls away like a retreating army, the storm breaks, you look up at the sky. A thin line of sunlight cuts through the shattered clouds. The sea calms beneath you, exhausted, like everyone. Bjarki collapses back into the blankets, breathing ragged but alive. Kolbrand closes his eyes, whispering thanks to any god that listened. Kettle stands in the center of the deck, drenched, battered, shaking, but unbroken. Arnvid rests a hand on the mast, forehead touching the wood as if thanking it for surviving. Your father sits heavily beside you, placing a hand on your shoulder. "You did well," he says. "Better than many grown men I've sailed with." You look at the crew, every one of them bruised, soaked, trembling, but smiling, because they survived together. The storm took nothing from them, not a man, not a mast, not a ship. Vikings never beat the sea, they endure it. Valor and survival as sunlight strengthens and the crew begins repairs. Arnvid speaks toward the open sea. "Remember this day," he says. "The storm tried to break us and failed." Kolbrand adds, "Because we held each other." Bjarki whispers, "Because we didn't surrender." Your father finishes, "Because we are Vikings and the ocean must earn the right to kill us." You breathe deeply, letting the remaining storm wind wash over your face. You survived a voyage with no maps. You survived the sea's fury. You survived the gods' test. And you know now deep in your bones, the sea is a teacher, a killer, a judge, a blessing. And every man who crosses it writes his story not in ink, but in scars.